万事不求人，私人助理、私人顾问时代来临了。六度万事，万事相助，超强博士群不断奉献专项服务，信息、财经、健康、文娱、教育、旅游、消费、科技、美食，让您的生活品质全线升级。六度世界现在体验，请去3w.6度.world。
限时免费期间，全体注册网友免费使用付费版的高级功能如下：支持论坛搜索，免费画图。第一步，点击右上角最左边的机器人符号开始对话，像图片中红框中的那样。第二步，如图选择六度万事，我们未来将推出更多的 AI 供大家选择。然后就可以与六博士悄悄畅谈了。还支持论坛内部信息搜索哦。您还可以让六博士做你的助手，帮你绘制漂亮图片。最后可以点击添加好友进来，一起与六博士工作。一起来3w.6度.world 尝试吧。
It's truly a great honor for me to be able to stand here to talk with you under his name. So today I'm going to share with you my thought on the so-called new era. All right. But I want to start with China's economy because I'm an economist, right? So if we look into the news, particularly, say, the Western media, probably every piece of news is talking about the decline of China, okay? So I just happened to check the New York Times recent pieces. I think this is the most recent one written by Krugman. Right? Why is China in so much trouble? This one is really alarming. How do we manage China's decline? Not even China's recession, but China's decline, right? You know how what that word means, right? Decline. And then problems with China's economy, how scary is China's crisis? You name it, it's all about the crisis in China, right? So if we look at the data over the last several years, China's economy has kind of on a really difficult road. Growth rates declined from about 7% to barely 2% during COVID time, right? So many sectors have been targeted by government policy, right? And those sectors had a huge decline, and that had a huge impact on the economy. Okay, so people ask the question, why? Why, the Chinese economy has been in such a difficult time? Okay, if you look at those ratings, right, they're going to point out, causes that related to long-term trajectory of the Chinese economy. For example, Krugman has a series of the dilemma of thrift. Chinese people save too much. China consume too little. Okay. Of course, China is one of the countries with the heaviest savings. So long before COVID, the saving rate was 45%. During the COVID time, the saving rate increased by 2 percentage points. So right now it's about 47%. It's huge, right? What is the saving rate in the United States? About 18%. Okay, so that's the difference of it. Chinese people do save a lot. But that actually ignored one fact. That is before the financial crisis, China's saving rate was even higher. It was the highest point was 52%. So after the crisis, the financial crisis, actually China's saving rate dropped quickly, okay, from 52% to 45%. That's remarkable, right? Yes, there is a lack of consumption, but before COVID, consumption increased quite dramatically. Okay. Now, aging, many users say, hey, look, Chinese population is declining, aging is going to slow down the Chinese economy. Yes, in the long run, probably that's going to happen. But in the short run, we actually face the reverse problem. That is, we worry about unemployment, right? You all heard about the unemployment rate of youth. What is 22% or something? The government actually worry about unemployment, okay, not the lack of labor. At least in the short run, we are going to have still, right, at least the structural unemployment. Many people don't know that the adoption of AI and automation is the fastest in China among all countries. Okay, so to give you one figure, so the World Economic Forum, so-called Davos Forum, identifies so-called model factories. And basically, it's called the 暗夜工厂. It's a dark factory. You don't need any people. Okay, so right now on the list there are about 140. Do you know the number in China? 50. Okay, so China accounts for about 40% or even higher, right? So the adoption of automation is so fast in China. That's going to replace a lot of labor, right? And we really don't think aging is going to affect China's supply. Consumption, probably a little bit, health, social security, old age security, probably are going to be a problem, but that's not in the short term. Lack of confidence on the part of private entrepreneurs, yes. But what are the causes, right? We have to think about the causes with the lack of confidence. Worsening international environment, yes, right? Because the U.S. export control on China, there is a huge chilling effect. The real impacts are small, right? Because the United States adopt this policy called small yard, high fence. Right, so the area of restriction is quite small, but the chilling effect is big. Okay, but even on that front, the impacts are mainly in the high-tech sector, right? Not economy-wide. Okay, for example, U.S. Commerce Department has a so-called entity list, right? On the list, China has about 700 companies, institutions, also, right? And those entities cannot get high-tech products from the United States. But do you know how many companies, registered companies in China? More than 20 million, right? So the percentage is really small, okay? I don't think that explains China economy slow down. Okay, and also even in long run, we have to think about the potentials of the Chinese economy. Okay, actually over the last decade or so, China has been moving really fast. So-called middle range technology. Okay, so how big is China's manufacturing sector? It's actually over 30% of all the total. You add the United States, Japan, Germany together, the sum is smaller than Chinese manufacturing sector. Okay, and the economy is huge, particularly the manufacturing sector. China is also moving to become the world's largest car exporter. This year, definitely, China is going to take over Japan to become the largest are exporting. Okay. So in the middle rank industries, China definitely now is number one in terms of size and also in terms of some key technologies. Okay. Even in more advanced technologies, China does not lag behind. AI, alternative energy, EVs. And many people say, hey, you are exaggerating because thinking about those, what's it called, the LLC, right? ChatGPT, right? So United States has ChatGPT, right? China has what's it, 文心一言 by Baidu, right? It's about 1.5 generation behind ChatGPT, okay? But that's fine, okay? In terms of application, China is far ahead of any other country, okay? To give you one small example, recently, my wife said, well, we need to change our locks of our doors. So now we can use face image to open our door, right? But I thought, oh my God, right? Several years ago, it was only on sci-fi films, right? But I can use my face to open my door. Alternative energy, in terms of solar energy, the solar panel, what's the share of Chinese product? 90%, more than 90% of solar panel equipment, right, are produced either in China or by Chinese companies in other countries. Okay, wind power almost the same story. EVs, China's EV output is 60% of world total, 8 times US, 8 times US. Right. So this year probably we are going to sell at least 9 million EVs. Okay, 30% of total sales. And you just think about kind of future technologies. China does not lag behind. Fusion, quantum computing, quantum communication, photonic chips. China does not lag behind. Okay. And probably in some areas we are going to see China lead the world. Well likely, right? So talking about the China's potentials of the current growth, I remain optimistic. Okay, I don't think much of the talk inside China or outside China about the future of China's economy is valid. So then how do I explain this slowdown of the Chinese economy? Right. So this is the essence of my talk today. So my theme is here. China's economic slowdown has been a result of the new era's conscious effort to correct the dire consequences of the 40 years of reform. Okay, the new era is a period of time of correction, and the correction often comes with a cost, right? And the cost is represented by economic slowdown. So that's the theme of my talk today. Should I allow question in between or I don't know?
It's up to you. Normally we do it at the end, but
okay. If you have a pressing question, feel free to ask. But of course, I'm going to leave time for Q&A. Okay. Okay, so that's my theme. Now, so I have been thinking about the reform and opening here. Because this year is going to mark the 45 anniversary of reform and opening. Right? I don't think we're going to have a huge celebration in China because this is a different time now, right? But intellectuals do reflect on the history of reform and opening and gradually, actually, at that period of time, is becoming a topic for historians, right? History of reform and opening. My thinking, to an extent, has been framed by this book, The Fourth Turning, right? The book that was a profit book, right? Written by two scholars in the late 1990s. Okay, and I just checked online. I just found out a new book by one of the authors. Another author died. Okay, so they propose a kind of a strange theory to interpret American history. To put it short, they believe that in American history there have been cycles of 8 years. So every 8 years there is a cycle, right? And within each cycle there are 4 periods: a high period, then weakening, unraveling, then crisis. And by their theory, right, today United States in the crisis period. And actually, this new book is about the coming crisis in the United States. Right? Sounds like a familiar, right? But the most scary thing is that the two authors said at the end of each crisis period, there is a total war, right? Either domestic war or international wars. So the last two, one is Civil War, one was 2 World War. Okay, so I'm not an expert on American history. I just found out that book is really fascinating. So on this trip, I ordered this book again. But using that, to think about China, surprisingly, I found this theory is really applicable to Chinese history, okay? At least the recent history. Think about the Mao's period, right? That's kind of a high period, at least before the Great Famine, right, in the 1950s. Right? A high period means the country has kind of a central ideology. Everyone submits to that. Believe the country is going to have a bright future, right? And everyone works harder for that future, and then everyone enjoys their life. Okay, that's the high period. Okay, that's the Mao Zedong period of time. But of course, after the Great Famine, there were mistakes after mistakes. But still, ideally, right? It's still China's a high period. Okay, a new chapter was open for Chinese history. Okay, then that's the next is Deng's period of time. And when we look at the Chinese history and apply their theory to Chinese history, I was surprised, right? Deng Xiaoping died exactly 20 years after he assumed the power in China. Right? Exactly 20 years. But that's the reform period of time in China, a weakening. Okay, what we call the new enlightenment, right? My generation is the generation of the 1980s. Okay, we went through that. That's a truly a period of enlightenment. Okay, and then we come to the ruling period, 1998 to 2017. That's a period of time of indeterminacy in China. Right? Anything goes, and there is no direction for China. Okay, that's also the period of time I want to talk a lot about. Like, in this period of time, China had a lot of problems, and Xi Jinping wanted to correct those problems. Okay. So I set the starting point of the new era to 2018, not 2012, only because, for one thing, for the sake of theory, right? 20 years, 20 years. But that's more substantial, I think. It was until the 19th Party Congress did Xi Jinping assume absolute power in China. We know that in 2018, the constitution was revised, right? The constitution got rid of the term limit for the president. The explanation was, the party secretary actually doesn't have a term limit, right? So if the presidency has a term limit, then they are not comparable. Okay. So I think starting from 2018, when Xi Jinping assumed absolute power in the party or in the country, did the new era really begin. Okay. So as I said, the new era is a period of correction. Okay. So let's then go back to the reform period, the first 20 years of reform period. As I said, this is the awakening time, right? The period of enlightenment. Okay. Of course, I don't need to get into the details of reform and opening. I think even, well, young students sitting over here, you know something about the reform and the opening, right? Here, I just want to emphasize two things, right? What it meant for opening, what it meant for reform, okay? For opening, that's basically open to the West, okay? First of all, open to Western ideas, political ideas, economic ideas, and the social ideas. And that's why we call that period of time a new period of enlightenment, right? We need enlightenment, right? I mean, I went to Peking University in 1982. That was kind of the golden age of Peking University, or for the country at large, okay? We read almost every book that we could get from the West, right? I still remember there was a book series called 走向未来丛书, right? You know that? That's a small white cover, right? Really small. Most of those books were translated from West, widely copyrights, okay? For sure, right? But that's good, right? For intellectual exchanges, that's actually, if the authors knew this, they could be more than happy to see that, okay? I still remember in my monthly stipend was only 34 yuan, but I could still spare some money to buy books, okay? And we read a lot, okay? Absorb everything we could, okay? And then on the ground, that's to adopt practice used to be reserved for capitalism. Okay, right? Start from Shenzhen, Xi Jinping, Deng Xiaoping began to try capitalism. Okay, right, and gradually spread out to the whole world, and the whole country, and so on. And also work on foreign investment. Okay, in the very early stage, foreign investment was work on. Even today, when you go to China, I go through those great shopping malls. I don't know if you noticed, almost every store has an English name, even today, right? But of course, many of the English names are awkward. Still, name, okay? That's very different from, say, India. Although India is an English-speaking country, because in India, actually on the street, there are not many English signs as you expect. Okay. What about reform? Reform basically means almost anything goes. to try anything, right? And because of that, kind of we find that the emergence of civil society that was forming in China. And inside all those changes, I think two things were really important, right, for China to make those changes. One is pragmatism, right? That the party adopt a new philosophy, pragmatism, pretty much like American pragmatism. Okay, before reform, right? The Communist Party emphasized on theory. Okay, so before reform, there was consistent theory Marxism. Okay, and if Marx didn't say anything, then you could not do it. Pragmatism changed us. Right? Pragmatism means basically two things. Okay, of course, it's a philosophy, right? It's complicated, but to me, it can be boiled down to just two things. One, there's no internal truth. Okay, 实践是检验真理唯有 Practice is the only way to test the truth. Okay. Second, ends proceed means. Right? You first think of whether your ends are sound. Then you choose the means. Not the other way around. And before the reform, right, means preceded the ends. Right? So 您要社会主义的好，不要资本主义的。So we prefer socialist grass than capitalist what's that? Wheat or something. Okay. So one example is Deng's argument for the market, right? So even in that period of time, China or the party still claim that China is a socialist country, but why a socialist country adopt the markets? Right? Because before market there was reserved for capitalism, but of course that was wrong, right? Even when human civilization began thousand years ago, market existed. Okay, but before reform, that was kind of received the wisdom, right? Market was something for capitalism. Socialism should not have the market. Okay, so then said no. Socialism can also adopt the market. And boom, right? That just liberated the Chinese people. So that's one key element. The other one is CCP, the Communist Party, turned back to China. That's awkward or paradoxical, right? The Communist Party of China, why it needs to come back to China. But don't forget, the Communist Party was a product of westernization in China. Right? The party always said, oh, we don't want the westernization of China. But the party itself was a product of westernization because it received a radical idea from the West, right? Marxism, as Mao said, and recently JPE paper, Journal of Political Economy paper, actually showed Marxism didn't have huge impact in the West or in China before the Russian Revolution. It was the Russian Revolution that spread Marxism, right? And Mao actually said this, right? 十月革命一声炮响，给中国送来了马克思列宁主义。But because of the Russian Revolution, Chinese intellectuals suddenly found, oh my God, there is one radical idea that can ignite the revolution in China, right? And provide a total solution to China's problem. What was China's problem at that time? China was weak, China was invaded, Chinese people, Chinese culture were backward. And we need to change this. How are we going to change this? We are going to adopt the most radical idea in the world to change it. Okay, right? But after a long time, when reform began, you're not going to do revolution again. In Chinese words, you have to do construction, 建设, right? So in that case, you have to give up Marxism, okay? At least the radical parts of Marxism, right? And where will the party find the new wisdom? China's own culture, own political tradition, okay? So that's why I say, the party turned back to China. I don't have time to talk about my own research, but actually my own research is on Chinese government officials, the promotion system. So internationally, there's a debate about the meritocracy in China, whether the Chinese system is meritocratic, right? But we use a lot of study, not providing a lot of evidence to show that the Chinese system, the party system, is meritocratic. That is, on average, government officials are being promoted based on merits. Okay, so that's a part of the Chinese history, key part of Chinese history. Okay. So because of that, China became what I call an unconventional developing country. What is a conventional developing country? I studied development economics. Okay, so a conventional developing country is featured by political monopoly. A few people, a few families just monopolize politics. Okay, that's actually one of the key problems in many European countries. Think about Philippines. Do you know in 1978, what's the fraction of Chinese income in Philippine income? 1/5. Only 1/5. Today, China's per capita income is more than 3 times Philippine income. Okay, and most people agree that the underdevelopment or slow development in the Philippines is because of its political structure, right? Although it has on the face as a democratic system, but we all know the politics is controlled by a few families. Okay. Business political alliances, right? When businesses become large, the first instinct for those business people is what? Act of the government, right? So that's going to make the business easier to do. You monopolize the business, okay? That's also observed in most developing countries. And widespread spread of corruption. In many developing countries, they're so-called petty corruption, right? Small corruption. But in some countries, corruption is much bigger. Okay. Everywhere, okay, and high inequality, okay, right? And we always talk about the U.S. Become more unequal, but compared with those developing countries, yeah, okay, yeah, much more equal than most developing countries, right? What's the Gini coefficient in the United States? 0.47, right? In most developing countries, it's about 0.5. Or even higher. Okay. But in the first 20 years of reform and opening, China was kind of more unconventional developing country. Right? And so China didn't have those problems. Why? First, because the Mao's era created an equal society. No dominant social classes in China. Right? Although we don't agree with the means Mao used. But eventually, Mao created a completed, equalized, and even society. And another one was that, just like my generation, we were aspired for a new life, right? There's a new future for us. So no time for corruption or anything. Of course, there's no strong business. at that time in China. Okay. So that's kind of the golden time for China. Okay. And the next 20 years, things now on the one hand went even better. That is, China's growth rate went up. Right? China's high growth period of time was the first decade of the century. Okay, most of China's wealth was accumulated in that period of time. But on the other hand, in that period of time, China began to accumulate a lot of problems. And then China was on the way to become a conventional developing country. Okay. So let's see, what were the problems? The first one was alarming inequality. Our university collect nationwide data every other year, so we know well how income distribution involved in the country. So here I only provide one set of numbers. The lowest 10% of population in China only owns 0.5% of income. What's the number in US? I think it must be higher. I know the lowest 50% of US population owns about 35% of total income. In China, 70%. All right. So China is much more unequal society than US. In terms of wealth, the lowest 10% actually has a negative wealth. Okay, they are borrowing to get by. What about the highest 10%? The highest 10% owns 35% of national income and 68% of national wealth. So that's the kind of inequality in China. Second, widespread corruption. Right. Corruption is a cancer in any country, but in China, it has become so big, so widespread. Okay. I'm going to give you data. It's just alarming. Just alarming. Sometimes I feel really pessimistic about the future of China in terms of eradicating corruption. Right? After 10 years of anti-corruption drive, we still see a lot of corruption in China. And many of those kind of officials, before they assumed that their position, already decided to get a bribery. Or to put it another way, they want to become government official only because they want to take a bribery. I know several cases of this, recent cases, right? So this makes me really feel bad about Chinese culture. Is that the part of Chinese culture? Okay. But in terms of the start of corruption, I would say that two reasons. First, faster growth just to raise the appetite of government officials. Okay. The salaries of government officials in China are relatively low. For example, officials in the Ministry of Education, they earn only a fraction of our salary. Our salary can be 3 times, even 4 times their salary. Okay. So when they, are in a banquet with those business people, and the business people, when you eat with them, one meal can cost easily 100,000 yuan. Easily, right? That's about, at that time, 20 years ago, that's actually about the annual income, or even more than annual income of a government official, decent government official. Okay, so it's really tempting, right, to take a bribery. Okay, and also the government has been commercialized. right? I talked with government officials, they say, oh, what's the difference between us and those business people, right? They're doing business, we are also doing business. We're trying to get business into our city, right? So if we are doing business, it's very easy for government officials to think we are providing kind of service, and those services should be paid back, right? So another problem is the fragmentation of the party. Jim Oil, a political scientist in Stanford, pointed this fragmented authoritarian regime almost 30 years ago. But at that time, she meant to say the state was fragmented. China actually has the most decentralized economic system in the whole world, physical system in the whole world. Okay, right? Local governments have a lot of power even today. And so at the surface is a kind of a centralized authoritarian system. But if you look into the system, you'll find it's hugely decentralized. That actually caused a lot of problems in China, although it also gave local government officials huge incentives to develop the local economy. But entering the second 20 years of reform, the problem became even worse, right? At that time, we called the 9 members of the Standing Committee of Politburo 九龙治水. There were 9 dragons in the Standing Committee, and each dragon was in charge of a certain business in the party, and the other people could not mess up with him. So think about the Zhou Yongtang. Zhou Yongtang now is in jail. He was sentenced death, right, with 2-year parole. So which means he's going to be in jail forever until he dies. Okay, he was in charge of the paramilitary, the internal security force, and the police force. And he was so powerful. We all know the incident, right? In 2012, when Wang Yijun escaped into the Chengdu consulate, the American consulate, Zhou Yongtang ordered the paramilitary to circle the consulate. Okay, but it was almost a civil war. The party was fragmented. Right? But that was a lesson. Okay. Collective leadership met as a bottleneck. So after Deng Xiaoping or after Mao Zedong, collective leadership was emphasized as one of the key principles of the party. But at that time, it faced a huge challenge. Okay. So inside the party, almost anything goes. That's really dangerous for the party. And also the rise of business political alliance, right? I sense that many Chinese business people have with this Hu Xueyan dream. Hu Xueyan, this guy, was a businessman at the end of Qin Dynasty, right? He was also a government official, some people were, right? The high-ranking government officials. I think he's a businessman, okay? He controlled a huge amount of business. Well, of course, the end to him was not that bad. That was really bad. You know, the government confiscated all his belongings, and he died in suffering. Okay, but the people don't remember his end, but enjoy his story. There was actually a TV series called Hu Xueyan, praising him. Okay, right? So I tell you, many, not all, many business people, when their business become large, they want to become Hu Xueyan. Okay, Guo Wengui now is in American jail, right? Is one of them. Another one is the Evergrande CEO. What's his name? Xu Jiaying. Yeah, Xu Jiaying is another. I can name many more. Okay. And also excessive commercialization, the educational sector. Okay. Of course, to ask the market to provide education has done a lot of good things to China, particularly in tertiary education, right? And also in high school education, and even in some compulsory education. But because of commercialization, total commercialization of the educational sector, we have created kind of a parallel system besides the school system, the so-called extracurricular training. Right, so you have one first grade in school. There's another one first grade in a company. Okay, so everyone becomes so nervous. Right? So you talk with young moms. Many of my female students have become moms. At the dinner table, there's only one topic, that's their children's education. Right? Everyone becomes so anxious about children's education. And most of the kids only know how to take exams. It's destroying the future of China. Okay. The financial sector, right? High leverage, excessive financialization. Okay. Particularly between 2012 and 2018, it's a huge rise of the financial sector. And that's such a alarm to many government officials, particularly Xi Jinping himself. I guess he didn't like that. And also, many top leaders take that as a sign of China's Americanization, right? And we should learn from United States how to do innovation, and we should not learn from United States doing finance. Finance is too much in the United States. That's one of the lessons, those top leaders have learned. The housing sector, right? For top leaders, too much trouble in the sector, and the sector has absorbed too much resource. Okay. And local government's commercial debts is also a huge problem. Okay. And I can list more and more. So this raises a question, I think also an academic question, right? Where's the boundary between the market and the government? So then that comes to a new area, right? What Xi Jinping intended to do, okay? So in mind of the new era leaders, particularly in the mind of Xi Jinping, right? Don't get me wrong, I don't know Xi Jinping in person, right? But we have to learn Xi Jinping's writing. Be serious reading his writing and his speeches. Okay, I think that's important. It's a public intellectual and also a honest. I have to read his writings. So I'm kind of reading his mind. Okay. So I think he believes those problems are just intolerable. Okay, right? The fate of the party and a healthy economy are at stake. Well, without correcting those problems, the party is going to break up. And one day, probably the party is not going to be there. Okay. So the aim, this is purely my reading, is kind of going back to the 1950s to rebuild China as a high period. And it's in spiritual term. not exactly 1950s, because 1950s we had a command economy, right? No more. I don't think Xi Jinping wants China to adopt command economy. Market economy is still China's future. China still opened up to the world. Right? Xi Jinping always say this. Okay, but at the spiritual side, I think his generation still believe that's the best time for China. Right? All the people have the same ideology. All the people have the same goal. All the people work together toward that same goal. Right? That's the high period. So how to correct those problems? To which campaigns? Okay. So that's the method. Okay. Because and then one of my advisors in Wisconsin is a Harvard graduate, Edward Freeman. And he told me, we social scientists have theories for almost everything, except two things. One is that why a country doesn't have military coups, like India? Why a country always has military coups, like Thailand? Okay, we don't have a convincing theory. Another thing is the eradication of corruption. Why corruption went away in the United States? Right? Some people say, oh, because of progressive movement. That's probably not the only reason. Right? Actually, we don't have a convincing theory about that. Okay, I think in his mind, although he has never read the writings of Freeman, right? But probably he had the right sense, right? To eradicate the corruption, probably you need a campaign. And also to correct other problems, probably you need a campaign. Okay. Rule of law is seen as ineffective. Okay. That because rule of law took a long time to establish in the first place, and it's too slow, right? And also short pains are better than long pains. I think in the top leaders' mind, if say we adopt a rule of law institutions to solve those problems, then China is going to enter a period of slow pains, long pains. And in the mind, then let's have a short pain. Okay, then we correct all the problems, and then we're going to have a brighter future. Okay, so for the sake of time, then let me go a little bit quicker, right? So first, anti-corruption drive, right? So that's we actually has a paper on this, and so this is a kind of a transformation of the governance model from what we call permissive model to a punitive model. Right. So now economic growth is not the first priority to promote a government official. Loyalty to the party is the first priority. Okay. How many people have been prosecuted? Around 4.6 million. To put it into perspective, what's the number of counterparty in China? Close to 90 million, which means 5% of party members have been prosecuted. And what's the number of public servants in China? Only 8 million, which means more than half of public servants have been prosecuted. That's alarming, right? But still, so in the first half of this year, 258,000 people have been persecuted. Actually, more than the average of the last 10 years. So yeah, to eradicate corruption, you probably need a campaign, but where is the end? Right? That's always in people's mind. And when you have this anti-corruption drive, sector by sector, right? Recently just on the pharmaceutical, medical sector. Okay. Next, probably the legal system. The next, probably the educational system. Okay. Right. So that's the question. We all talk about the confidence of private business. Right. So if we do have this anti-corruption drive, sector by sector, it's really hard for people to build kind of a confidence, right, in the economy. But in the mind of the top leaders, they would say, hey, this is just a short pain, right? We are going to take it. The second is to restore the authority in the party. First, the authority of the top leader. That's the lesson, hard lesson learned from the whole period of time. I think particularly because of the Zhou Yongkang incident. Okay, so that so this is my understanding why power should be concentrated in the hand of just one person, the party secretary and the president of the country, and of course the chairman of the military committee. Right, so kind of the trinity. Okay, right, to avoid a catastrophic consequence like Yugoslavia. I don't know how many people know that how Yugoslavia went apart, right, with Tito, with the leader. But after his death, he said, no, I'm not going to pick up the successor, so you guys just rotate. Now that system only worked for, I don't know, 3 years or something, right, and broke out. So that's the first thing. The second is the authority of the central party organs, right? The decentralization is so deep in China, and local governments had gathered a huge amount of power. Okay. It's similar to the housing market sector. The central government always want to control housing prices, but local governments didn't want to do that. Even today, when the housing market dropped by 2.5 years now, you don't see the prices coming down. Why? Because local government don't want to allow prices to come down. Okay, over the last 20 years, between the central government and local governments almost always won the game. Yeah. So Xi Jinping wants to strengthen the authority of the center, right? And the means he used has been inspections. Okay. For example, in our university, every 3 years we got an inspection. So 3 years ago we got one. We almost finished. Then this year we got another one. Okay. So to do what? To align your ideas, your behavior with the center. Okay. But of course, there are negative impacts, so-called "躺平," right? So local government officials just lay down. They don't have any incentives. Okay, everyone plays safe. Let me tell you a story. Sometimes it's a good drive to talk about the abstract notice. Tell you a real story, but it's really hard to even imagine when you write a novel, right? They are not the right thing, but it really happened in reality. It was a county in south of the Shanxi province, my home province. Okay, So there was an accident on a highway. A tractor of chemicals brought up. Okay, so there was a fire. Normally in the past, what do? You send fire engines, right? Put off the fire. That's it. But today, no. You write a report to the city, and the city writes a report to the province. The province writes a report to the central government. Everyone actually really swiftly writing reports. Okay? Even the central government sends an expert, right? But none of them goes to the ground, right, to see the burning crop. They stay in the countryside discussing the plan, how to put off the fire for 7 hours. After 7 hours, they come up with a plan and say, let's go. Then people report back, you don't need to go because the fire is out. Right? That's actually the reality on the ground. Because local government officials play safe, then of course the SOEs are favored. You give resources to SOEs, you're not going to get into any trouble. But if you give resources to a private company, if that company fails, you are going to be responsible. Okay. Next is to remove business political alliances, right? We know that China's ICT sector is slowing down, so-called platform company, right? Because there is kind of an anti-monopoly drive over there, okay? I don't think that is the real reason. The real reason is some of the owners of those big tech companies had the 胡雪岩 dreams. Okay, that's the true reason. Okay. But of course, there are negative consequences. Slowdown of the ICT sectors. Actually, China's ICT sector was ahead of the United States before 2018. But then look at the last 5 years, China lagged behind again. And the slowdown the capital market, because capital market needs big news, right, to boost the sales, boost the prices. And because the slowdown ICT sector, then the capital market just loses all of the news. Correcting excessive commercialization, deleveraging the financial sector, getting rid of P2P, downsizing, shadow banking, all sorts of things. Downsizing the actual curriculum training sector, poking out the housing bubbles in 2021. Okay, and I'm going to show you data because that affects today China's recovery. And restricting local government's commercial debts. Okay. But of course, that has caused a lot of disruptions in the economy. Look at the housing sector. Sorry, I am put the English here, but it's clear. So this is the sales floor areas, right? So China's recovery during the pandemic was actually quite good, right? At the end of 2020, early part of 2021 was really good. And you see the housing sales just shoot up, okay? And then the government began to not crack down, to restrict that sector severely, okay? And basically, dramatically reduced credit supply to that sector. But the housing sector needs a lot of credits. Without the credit flow into that sector just dies off. Okay. So you see the sales just turned negative This is a growth, annual growth, a year-on-year growth. And this is investment, the same story. Right? This is the sources of finance, just to turn the negative growth. Okay, so this is one of the key reasons why the Chinese economy is a slowdown this year. The housing sector accounts for 17% of Chinese GDP. Okay, so when that sector slows down, then the whole economy slows down. People talk about the lack of consumption, but if you go to China, you go to a restaurant, it's full. Right? You go to the train station, it's packed, fully packed. It's very difficult to get the train ticket now. Okay, but that kind of consumption has a ceiling, right? But when you buy a house, your consumption is in millions. Okay. All right, so you look at this negative growth, which means the consumption is growing negatively. Right, you need a lot of other kind of consumption to make up for the loss. I don't show you local governments. Local governments have the same problem. Baituan, the dean of the School of Management in Tsinghua University, estimated that over the last 3 years, local governments have accumulated 4 trillion deficits, 4 trillion RMB in deficits, right? So almost all the local governments have tightened up their belt, cutting salaries, okay, to their employees, cutting investment, okay. So, when you have 2 large sectors contracting, can you imagine your economy to grow? No way. That's the current situation in China, right? So the slowdown, in a sense, is engineered by government policy, not because of the Chinese economy itself is bad. Okay. Last one, eradication of poverty and the common prosperity. Okay. Right. So in 2021, the party claimed the victory of poverty alleviation. Right? China got rid of absolute poverty. But what's the next? The next is common prosperity. Right. That's one of the so-called Putin, the initial conviction, right, of the CCP. Okay. I think that's going to be one of the key themes for China in the next several decades. But because there's a lack of theory, how are you going to talk about the common prosperity? Because Marxism is still the main theory that the party holds. So when party propaganda talks about common prosperity, it has to use Marxism to talk about it. That's really awkward, because by Marxism, in the end, China is going to become what? Communism, which means all the private properties will be confiscated into the hands of the state, right? So that's why 2 years ago, when common prosperity was announced, private business people, as well as middle-class people, were so worried. Okay, so that's my interpretation of the new era. Not all. I can also talk about reducing the influence of Western ideas, right? All sorts of things. Okay, but those things that I've talked about, I think have more implications for the Chinese economy. And I think if you take my explanations, probably you're going to have better understanding why the Chinese economy is slowing down. Let me conclude by talk about several things, right? One is the campaigns, okay? To me, many of the problems I have just talked about are structural. They are embedded in China's economic and political system, right? So can we really use campaigns to change them, right? That's still an open question to me. Yeah, probably the leaders prefer short pains to longer term pains. But short term pains may have long term implications. For example, the economy is so bad, people don't have confidence in the Chinese economy, then people are going to move their money away. They're going to immigrate to other countries, right? So that becomes kind of a long term pains for China. So in a sense, you create a long term pains, not to avoid long-term pains. And also, of course, campaigns and hamper the rule of law, right? In the end, we still want to build a society of rule of law, but campaigns really destroy rule of law. So another question is, through those corrections, will China rebuild a kind of a high period? Right? Because, in my reading, I think the aim of those corrections is what? To build a new China with a spiritual 1950 high period. Okay. I think it's going to fall short because China or the Communist Party by now does not have a new theory. Okay, you need a new theory, right, to frame this new high period. Okay, what is the high period? I read the introduction of Howe's new book. Right, he said the United States is going to rebuild a new society probably in 10 years' time. Okay, and then in that new society, that's a high period, another high period of the United States. That's going to be a period of time of kind of a new egalitarian. Okay, I don't know if that's the future of the United States, but at least you have to submit to a new theory, right, for the whole country. What about China? What about the Communist Party? Okay, I think that now the Communist Party is caught in a dilemma. On the theoretical front, the party still holds Marxism as its orthodox. Okay, so the party's language, their own theoretical language, is still Marxist language. Okay, but of course, Marxism doesn't apply to China. Okay, everyone knows this. It doesn't apply. Okay, it's obsolete, most of it. Okay, and then in practice, actually, the party has adopted traditional Chinese political thought. For example, meritocracy is adopted for the management of government officials. Pragmatism actually is part of Chinese traditional values. Okay, right? So you look at the behavior of the party, it's almost a continuation of older China, right? So that's the second. Third one, more problematic, is that when the party speaks out toward the rest of the world, they have to adopt what I call a democratic narrative, right? For example, the newest theory is 全过通民主, all process democracy. No one knows what is all process democracy. Now, so that's because there is a poverty of theory, right? The party doesn't have its own theory, so when it speaks out to the rest of the world to use the democratic language, which doesn't describe China's reality. And as you love, right? I think the world would love. Okay. So that's the problem. How to solve this problem? Without solving those problems, I don't think we are going to get into kind of a new high curve. Okay. Okay, so that's my talk, a little bit long. If you read Chinese, you feel free to scan our WeChat. We have a follower of 300,000. Okay.
So, Professor Yao, thank you very much for that. I think those were quite provocative comments in terms of providing a different understanding than what's in the Western media of what's happening in the Chinese economy, and particularly the argument that much of this slowdown is intentional to correct for the problems of especially the last 20 years of reform. We're going to open up to questions. I just want to announce we have this room until 5:45, so we can have our usual standard half-hour questions. But if anyone needs to leave for class, if you could quietly do so out the door to the back or to the side, and if anyone needs to leave now, feel free to do so. I will get us started with the questions, just asking a simple question, especially recognizing that you're a prominent development economist. Late-stage development theory suggests that normally increasing political surveillance and increasing censorship is not compatible with late-stage development. So do you interpret the current trends of increasing surveillance, increasing censorship, as this is just temporary to the campaign? Or do you see this as yet another element of how China is trying to be an unconventional developing country in the late stage development?
That's actually not a simple question. It's a really hard question. Of course, I hope that it's temporary, right? But I truly believe in design, it was designed as temporary, right? I mean, Xi Jinping talks about the rule of law, and then we have a plan to build a country of the rule of law by 2035, right? So the long-term goal is still China is going to become that kind of a country. But the problem, of course, as I said, if you use campaign to eradicate all the problems, then it's going to make the rule of law even harder to build, right? I think that's the danger of it.
Would you like to call on individuals, or would you like me to call on them?
Either way.
Okay, so if you have a question, if you please raise your hand. Again, I just wanted to remind you, please, we do require that you identify yourself before you ask your question. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay, so
thank you, Danielle, for very insightful comments and arguments. My name is Edward. I'm from the Eastern Department. My question is on the anti-corruption and economic prosperity. So the anti-corruption and the anti-monopoly background that you mentioned helps to foster the so-called economic prosperity. And the numbers being executed, although being going up, however, the jail time for the penalty is going down, and more like it's more like alternatives instead of the actual effect of the people going to jail. That might help the prosperity in terms of like the tax the more tax revenue and less corruption in the economy. But why don't the governments provide fiscal stimulus to the very basic people, like many of the other countries would have done during the pandemic? And why would China, during the time when it's exiting the pandemic, not providing such safety nets to the very basic, to the very humble and those people who lost jobs, as you mentioned, a lot of unemployed people? Does that not fit into the common prosperity, or is that simply a policy mismanagement?
First of all, I don't think the objective of anti-corruption drive was a common prosperity. No, it's just a cancer in the economy, in the society, in the party. and it has to be taken away, okay, for the sake of itself. You asked the question why the Chinese government didn't give people money. Actually, over the last 3 years, I have been calling for the government to give cash to ordinary people. Probably you didn't notice, last May last year, Premier Li Keqiang actually said this word openly, and he said, China is still a developing country. China is not at a stage like the United States, developing countries to give people cash, right? The central government is not going to do this. But if the local governments, you have money, you can do that, right? So that's the answer, okay? I think many people still don't understand the Chinese leadership still hold a really conservative view about fiscal spending, about monetary expansion. Probably the Chinese government is one of the most conservative in terms of a fiscal expansion and monetary expansion, okay? So that I think that's also one of the reasons why the government didn't give cash to ordinary people.
Thank you, Daniel, for being here and giving us the lecture. I'm Jin Bella from Harvard Kennedy School. I actually have 2 questions for you, if that's okay. So the first one, you mentioned like the one of the problems that we are facing now is the business political alliances. I guess I was just wondering, like, what is the boundary or like the balance? Like, how do we value? Because you saw like the government tend to restrict like large businesses from like influencing the whole market. So what's like the boundary or criteria after doing that? And then think about like the US or other countries, there's like so much like transfer for government officials to say like the private sector to the government sector or like the nonprofit to public sector. So how do you observe that? So we have like some programs to receive. And the second one is that you mentioned also like the big negative impact would be, local officials tend to play safe and don't take initiatives or like the talking. So what's your personal opinion on that? Like, if there's a way to address this problem under the authority regime, or do you think that the 2 things are just?
For your first question, I mean, normally in other countries, say in a European country, the American practice is corruption, for sure, okay? But because it's institutionalized, it's not called corruption, okay? So that's why in China, it's not allowed. It is strictly not allowed. Government officials, after you retire, you're not going to go to business, period, okay? But of course, there is a downside. Retiring government officials cannot even go back to teach in a university easily, okay? But the problem, I think the problem in China or in any other developing country is not something so-called a revolving door, right? It's truly business political alliance coming together, right? It's like the Guo Gui. At that time, he could swing governments, high government officials, okay, ask them to do this, to do that, right? And then terminated people by government powers, okay? So that's the kind of the business political alliance. For your second question, I don't think local initiatives are incompatible with so-called authoritarian regime. Look at China before New Year, right? The local governments had a lot of free rule to do almost everything, okay? There's a huge literature on that, okay? As I said, I hope that, the current inspection is just a temporary. In the end, we still need the institutions, rule of law, to regulate the relationship between the central government and the local governments.
One property.
So, given time, would it be okay if you please limit yourself to one? Several hands up.
Andrew, and so my question is talk about cycles. All of the former, so you presented it in ways where people obviously had to deal with. There's a lot of question over how much of it, as you said, interpreting these personal thoughts versus whether this has been done by any other leader that came in after the period faces problems. But they have done the same thing, given that they were eating ideas about this in the 2012 period.
That's an interesting question. I mean, if I want to give you a philosophical answer, I could say history is going to find its agent. That's a good question. That's a hard question. I don't know. That my sense is that probably my philosophical answer is correct. History is going to find another person, if not Xi Jinping. This is the problem. So we're so severe in Chinese society. There must be some correction.
Thank you so much. My question is, what do you think the central government itself problems about other economic policy recognition because of the consequence of the campaigns? So there is yes a problem with the campaigns themselves, and we just think that's problem of the officials. What do you think can what do you think would be the plan to improve the consequences?
The incentive of local government officials.
Yeah, like also like how insightful opinions such as
in terms of what? In terms of incentives of local government officials. I see. Well, I actually in China, I have to say it's freer than you have thought, right? I dare to speak here, believe me. People in China will listen, right? So I'm going to say the same thing in China too, okay? So, those leaders know what we say, okay? But the problem why they don't adopt our advice, right? That's your question. I think that's a question of judgment. I think in their mind is that, okay, there are pains, but they are short pains, right? We have to take those short pains. Otherwise, we're going to have long pain, right? So then they choose the short pains. That's the only thing. Many people say, hey, Xi Jinping doesn't know this, doesn't know that. Wrong. He knows everything. So don't take it wrong. The system is still there. Information flows are still there, right? It's just a matter of judgment. Okay.
Thank you. Huge, massive computing. I have a question about the technological advancement. We mentioned in the beginning of the talk on solar, wind, EV, AI. We saw a lot of growth and achievements that China currently has. But you also talk about these campaigns. In a lot of governments, for me, feel like they might have impact on the innovations and people strive to do that. What do you feel is the relationship between those two going forward? Do you think the government will prioritize more innovation, above everything else, or do you think those will exist at the same time and there will be some kind of balance between those two?
I mean, the purpose of the correction is to make a kind of a cleaner economy, right? And it's supposed to be more friendly to innovation. At least that's the intention, right? But of course, when we look at the consequence, probably that's a different story. For example, direct finance used to account for 30% of the total finance. I mean, in the US, that's 70%, right? So to me, if China really wants to compete with the United States in terms of innovation, China has to adopt American system. No doubt about it. Right? This functioning capital market is it's kind of precondition for high innovation. Okay. But today, the percentage is not even 30%. I think now it's about 20%. At the highest point of deleveraging, it was only 7%, right? Something like that. Okay. So yes, there is a kind of a balance over there. But I don't know if the top leaders have realized this or not. It seems to me the direction is still to cut the financial sector and to reduce the financialization in the economy. I don't know. We hopefully in the future someday, people finally realize, hey, we should build a solid capital market.
And my friends is too over to the net and it's great. So it's like as I mentioned, she also have a secondary futures, especially 1950s. And what will be the biggest disadvantage that in and the knowledge.
Well, that's kind of a hypothetical question, right? We haven't even got to that point. Okay. What did it think about the United States in the 1950s, right? Or truly, many people actually believe 1950s was kind of the golden years for the United States too, right? Because that's the high period in the United States, right? So if you can truly find it's kind of a common theory that people believe, right? Probably is going to be better for any country. Okay, but of course to preserve personal freedom, that's a precondition. I think the question actually is whether we can get to that point, right? I think if we can get to that point, it probably is going to be better than today.
Question about the housing level. You mentioned there has been a long struggle between central government and local government about housing. And you mentioned that the local government always won. So I was so surprised. So I wonder if you can give more details or an example of how local government can actually win this struggle.
When you look at the housing prices, right? The central government always want to control the housing prices. Why housing prices are still so high, right? Particularly in first-tier cities. Ordinary people cannot afford that kind of prices, right? It's the only reason is the local governments allow high prices. To give you one example, my hometown, Xi'an, right? Housing price in Xi'an used to be very low. Okay, a fully furnished apartment. The price was 12,000 RMB per square meter. Okay, about 10 years ago, really low. But then there came a new party secretary, and he said that, oh, Xi'an's housing prices are not compatible with its status because Xi'an was designated as one of the 9 so-called central cities, right? So magnetic cities, okay? So he said we need to raise the housing price. What he did was to open up the hukou system. So as long as you have a college diploma, you can get the Xi'an hukou for free. So over like 3 years, each year more than, I don't know, 150,000 graduates went to Xi'an. And then the prices went up. That's a typical example. Because high prices are going to raise down the revenues.
Thank you, Danielle. Very interesting discussion. I'm resonating with one of these. Question is, so in the last 10 years, there has been a re-centralization of power. There were a couple of things that many in the business community, both in China and outside of China, were hoping to see, such as land reform, social safety net, and personally, my favorite, property tax. And the reasons I wanted to see these were, we wanted to see stable development, and there were a lot of benefits, at least for property tax, to creating a functioning secondary market for real estate, of course, has asset velocity opportunity, which is not being captured. Why do you suppose it is that with all of the re-centralization of power that they haven't undertaken some of these things, which seems there seems to be a lot of support from a lot of sectors to undertake? Thank you.
Some of the reforms, we have called a phrase called the fatigue of reform, right? I've been talking about the fatigue of reform for almost 20 years now. My interpretation is that most of the major reforms were done in the 1990s anyway. And if you want to do new reform, those reforms are going to touch the core of the Chinese system, the economic system, the political system. So those reforms are becoming so difficult to undertake, okay? In terms of property tax, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the property tax is so important to have a functioning real estate market, and it can provide really key financial resources to local governments. So local governments don't rely more on high prices, okay? That's very important. But why we just don't start a property tax? I think the reason is interested groups, okay? They are so strong. Many people have so many apartments, okay? And they are against it. That's probably the only reason, okay? So you can see, even there is a huge centralization, but the party still needs to care about, the opinions of ordinary people and also some powerful segments of the society. Okay, centralization doesn't mean centralization of everything, right? Centralization just means to solve the problem I just point out, okay? I have to say this, that centralization doesn't mean that the whole Chinese system has been centralized again. Some people say, China is going back to the planning period. No, not the case, right? The party, Xi Jinping himself, have always said, opened up to the rest of the world, reform, market economy, are still China's future, okay? There's no centralization in that sense, okay? So centralization is just for certain purpose, not the country as a whole.
万事不求人，私人助理、私人顾问时代来临了。六度万事，万事相助，超强博士群不断奉献专项服务，信息、财经、健康、文娱、教育、旅游、消费、 科技、美食，让您的生活品质全线升级。6度世界，现在体验，请去3w.6度.world。
限时免费期间，全体注册网友免费使用付费版的高级功能如下：支持论坛搜索，免费画图。第一步，点击右上角最左边的机器人符号开始对话，像图片中红框中的那样。第二步，如图选择6度万事，我们未来将推出更多的 AI 供大家选择。然后就可以与6博士悄悄畅谈了，还支持论坛内部信息搜索哦。您还可以让6博士做你的助手，帮你绘制漂亮图片。最后可以点击添加好友进来，一起与6博士工作。一起来3w.6度.world 尝试吧。
欢迎大家收看华尔街电视简报。我们现在给大家播报的主要内容包括：被认为有可能领导民主组织的亲大陆台湾立法者，抱歉，卢拉总统不能再经营巴莱公司了。碧桂园如何参与中国的房地产困境？随着严厉的新规生效，中国将贿赂的处罚加倍。理想汽车发布了他们称之为世界上最大的电动汽车。请大家收看被认为有可能领导民主组织的亲大陆台湾立法者。南华早报，韩国瑜是台湾新任立法院长，也是亲大陆的国民党成员，他将成为由北京认可的台湾民主基金会 PFD 主席。该基金会是一个由政府资助的组织，通过国际交流支持亚洲和台湾的民主发展。韩国瑜的主席职位引起了执政的民进党一些成员的担忧，他们担心他会利用 PFD 推进与大陆的融合工作，还有人担心他会将基金会的预算用于两岸关系，而不是人权和民主。抱歉，卢拉总统不能再经营巴莱公司了。彭博社，巴西总统卢拉警告称，矿业巨头巴西淡水河谷公司不应得到任何特殊待遇，应在与其他公司公平竞争的条件下进行。卢拉批评巴西淡水河谷公司，声称其缺乏社会和环境责任，并且拥有未开发的资产。他还表示，巴西公司需要与巴西政府的发展思路保持一致。巴西淡水河谷公司市值达600亿美元，正在等待任命其下一任首席执行官。卢拉表示，巴西淡水河谷公司不能认为自己是巴西的所有者。巴西淡水河谷公司的运营受到巴西政府的特许权、许可证和官僚许可的限制。该公司超过一半的收入来自中国，但其大部分资产位于巴西。碧桂园如何参与中国的房地产困境？彭博社，中国的房地产危机持续加剧，房价下跌和对陷入困境的开发商的担忧，使得购房者望而却步。曾经是中国最大的房地产开发商的碧桂园控股是这场低迷的最大受害者之一。该公司在8月份录得创纪录的亏损，现在面临潜在的清算风险。该公司未能及时采取措施应对经济放缓，并未意识到其对低端市场的过度依赖所带来的风险。碧桂园有超过3000个代建项目，是其竞争对手恒大的4倍，因此该公司的崩溃将产生更大的影响。随着严厉的新规生效，中国将贿赂的处罚加倍。南华早报，中国的警察、检察官和法官发誓要对行贿者实施更严厉的惩罚，以加强习近平主席的反腐败运动。根据刑法的新修正案，公司或实体的代表如果被判有罪行贿，可能面临10年监禁，而多次行贿被判有罪的人可能面临终身监禁和财产没收。理想汽车发布了他们称之为世界上最大的电动汽车。彭博社，中国电动汽车 EV 初创公司理想汽车推出了其首款纯电动汽车，一款名为 Mega 的7座多功能车。该车可以在单次充电下行驶710公里，并且可以在12分钟充电后行驶500公里。根据理想汽车首席执行官李想的说法，这是世界上最大规模的量产电动汽车。该车将于3月中旬上市，起价为人民币55.98元，77800美元。理想汽车此前一直专注于增程式电动汽车，中国低空经济将达到2万亿元，首次应用于电动垂直起降飞行器。南华早报， 中国民航局副局长韩军表示，到2030年，中国低空经济，包括在1000米以下运营的载人和无人民航飞行器，可能达到2万亿元人民币，2780亿美元，并力争领导这个新兴全球产业。韩军表示，该行业去年价值超过5000亿元人民币，并补充说，民航局将与地方政府合作建设民用机场和临时着陆场。据国际数字经济学院预测，到2025年，低空产业可能为中国经济贡献3万亿元至5万亿元人民币。中国股市自10月以来出现最大的周流出，据美银美林表示，彭博社，中国股票基金经历了自去年10月以来的最大周流出，截至2月28日的一周内，约有16亿美元被撤出。这是在中国政府试图恢复股市信心的背景下发生的。此前几年，由于疫情引起的下滑和增长放缓，当局已经采取措施来提振市场情绪，例如限制卖空交易和打击高速交易。然而，中国仍面临挑战，包括房地产危机、通缩压力和需求疲软。尽管如此，这些资金流出是在中国股市在多年下跌后显示出触底迹象的一段时间之后发生的。安全仍然是中国的首要任务，而不是经济。日经亚洲，据 Inodo Economics 的创始人兼首席经济学家戴安娜·乔伊列娃表示，中国在习近平主席领导下对安全问题的关注将继续对经济增长造成压力。虽然习近平强调安全是确保共产党政权稳固的手段，但这种关注也阻碍了经济发展。中国最具创新力的公司正面临日益严格的监管审查，私营企业家士气低落，外国投资者纷纷离开该国。中国经济还受到不良债务、产能过剩和谨慎消费者的阻碍。乔伊列娃预计全国人大会议将把安全置于增长之上。中国的工厂对经济发出了混合信号，迫使北京采取更多措施。CNN，中国制造业对经济健康状况发出了混合信号，而此时距离国家领导人的重要会议只有几天。官方采购经理人指数 PMI 在2月份下降至 49.1， 表明该行业出现收缩，而以较小的私营企业为重点的财新制造业 PMI 上升至 50.9， 表明该行业扩张。高盛分析师表示，两个 PMI 之间的差异可能是经济结构转变的迹象。中国领导人承诺通过提高国内需求和创新产业来实现2024年的经济增长目标。菲律宾誓言对杀害中国公民的嫌疑人毫不留情。南华早报，菲律宾计划对去年在大都会马尼拉绑架和杀害6名中国公民的3名嫌疑人提起诉讼。嫌疑人面临多项指控，包括绑架和杀人。这起事件发生在2023年10月，嫌疑人闯入受害者的住所，绑架了他们，后来将他们杀害。已经找到了4名受害者的尸体，而另外2人，一名女子和她的孩子仍然下落不明。嫌疑人并未要求赎金，这在涉及中国人质的案件中是不寻常的。菲律宾绑架中国公民的大多数案件与菲律宾离岸博彩运营商 Pogos 有关，这些运营商一直是犯罪活动的源头，包括绑架和谋杀。菲律宾已采取措施打击 Pogo 行业，关闭运营并驱逐中国工人。以色列在加沙附近援助车队附近开火，导致多人死亡，全球范围内的谴责随之而来。南华早报，周五，以色列军队向赶去收集食品援助的巴勒斯坦平民开火，导致加沙地带100多人丧生。以色列方面表示，这是由数千名加沙人包围38辆援助卡车引发的踩踏事件，导致数十人死亡和受伤。美国正在核实2个相互竞争的版本关于这一事件，华盛顿正在敦促以色列允许更多援助进入。全球各方纷纷谴责，法国总统埃马纽尔·马克龙、伊朗、中国和阿拉伯联盟秘书长都称之为一场大屠杀。为什么更多的美国武器将很快在美国以外的地方生产？纽约时报，澳大利亚正在与美国公司合作生产火炮弹药和制导导弹，已成为第51个国防生产州。这些武器将按照五角大楼的规格制造，其中一些将出售给美国合作伙伴或用于补充美国的储备。这一举措反映出美国独自无法生产足够的武器来进行长期战争和威慑的认识。脆弱的合作伙伴， 如台湾，已经面临美国装备订单延迟的问题，因为中国的军事能力继续增长。在中国梅西离婚之后，足球为香港乌龙球付出代价。南华早报，迈阿密国际队访问香港时，由于梅西只是在场边观看而没有参加一场门票已售罄的比赛，引发了中国观众的愤怒和要求退款的呼声，这可能导致美国和阿根廷足球失去对中国这个拥有14亿人口的市场的接触。据报道，梅西去年转会迈阿密后，他获得了球衣销售的一部分份额和联赛 Apple TV 流媒体服务的新订阅的一部分收入，为美国职业足球大联盟 MLS 支付了25亿美元的费用，但该 Apple 交易并不涵盖中国大陆。迈阿密国际队的 Instagram 帖子收到了诸如向中国球迷道歉和你们不再受欢迎等回复。中国对这一事件的反应凸显了外国球员在中国想要踢球时需要尊重的必要性。缩水通货膨胀101，更小的食品杂货的经济学。纽约时报，缩水膨胀是一种减小产品尺寸而不降低价格的常见策略，几个世纪以来一直是公司避免提价的手段。然而，消费者对这一趋势的认识越来越高，他们在 Reddit 和 TikTok 等平台上表达了自己的愤慨。甚至拜登总统在最近的一段视频中也对这个问题发表了评论。虽然缩水膨胀并不是一个新现象，但在今天似乎比以前发生的更少。本文解释了缩水膨胀的工作原理，并讨论了它对消费者和通胀数据的影响。截止日期后，香港有24个加密货币许可申请人，暴露了新加坡的差距。南华早报，香港证券及期货事务监察委员会 SFC 在2月28日截止日期前收到了24份虚拟资产交易平台 BATP 许可证申请，远少于新加坡，后者在去年年底已经收到了70份申请。SFC 已经警告尚未申请的加密货币交易所必须在5月31日前离开香港。曾任新加坡金融管理局监管机构的 Angela On 表示，他最初对香港申请数量相对较低感到惊讶，但认为严格的要求可能是原因。上个月，香港金融服务及财政局启动了关于监管场外交易 OTC 服务的咨询。人们对香港的监管是否足够有竞争力提出了疑问，而新加坡、日本和其他市场正在推行自己的政策。香港还宣布了监管代币化证券和稳定币的计划，香港金融管理局正在探索数字港元。各位观众朋友，大家好，我是来自6度世界的6博士。今天我们一起来总结一下最近的新闻。首先，台湾的立法者韩国瑜成为了台湾民主基金会的主席，这引起了一些人的担忧，他们担心他会利用这个机构来推动与大陆的融合工作。巴西的总统卢拉警告说，巴西淡水河谷公司不应该得到任何特殊待遇，应该在与其他公司公平竞争的条件下进行。卢拉批评巴西淡水河谷公司缺乏社会和环境责任，并且拥有未开发的资产。中国的房地产危机持续加剧，房价下跌和对开发商困境的担忧使得购房者望而却步。碧桂园控股是受影响最大的开发商之一，该公司在8月份出现了创纪录的亏损，现在面临潜在的清算风险。中国的警察、检察官和法官发誓要对行贿者实施更严厉的惩罚，以加强反腐运动。根据新修正案，公司或实体的代表如果被判有罪行贿，可能面临10年监禁，而多次行贿被判有罪的人可能面临终身监禁和财产没收。理想汽车发布了他们称之为世界上最大的电动汽车，这款车将于3月中旬上市，起价为人民币55.98元，7.78美元。中国民航局副局长韩军表示，到2030年，中国低空经济可能达到2万亿元人民币，2780亿美元，并力争领导这个新兴全球产业。中国股票基金经历了自去年10月以来的最大周流出，截至2月28日的一周内，约有16亿美元被撤出。中国在习近平主席领导下对安全问题的关注将继续对经济增长造成压力。中国制造业对经济健康状况发出了混合信号，这一现象发生在国家领导人的重要会议即将召开之际。菲律宾计划对绑架和杀害中国公民的嫌疑人提起诉讼。以色列军队向赶去收集食品援助的巴勒斯坦平民开火，导致加沙地带100多人丧生。 澳大利亚正在与美国公司合作生产火炮弹药和制导导弹，已成为第51个国防生产州。迈阿密国际队访问香港时，由于梅西只是在场边观看而没有参加比赛，引发了中国观众的愤怒和要求退款的呼声。缩水膨胀是一种减小产品尺寸而不降低价格的常见策略，消费者对这一趋势的认识越来越高。香港证券及期货事务监察委员会 SFC 在2月28日截止日期前收到了24份虚拟资产交易平台 VATP 许可证申请，远少于新加坡。以上就是我对这些新闻的总结。我们可以看到，中国在许多领域都面临着挑战，包括房地产、股市和经济增长。然而，中国也在努力应对这些挑战，例如加强反腐运动和推动创新。我们期待看到中国在未来如何应对这些问题，并希望它能够找到解决方案。那么，你有什么样的想法？请在下方留言，与我们分享你的观点和问题。谢谢大家的收看。谢谢您的收看。上面播报的内容是6度团队推荐的全球专业媒体、智库、政府机构和行业专家的最新报道、分析简报。更详细的内容，请大家去这些媒体、智库的网站阅读。这些内容并不一定反映6度简报的立场，亦不能作为任何决策的建议。6度团队由专业媒体人、学者、科学家组成的独立新型媒体，大家可以根据自己的专业要求订阅各种简报，网址是6dobrief.com。您在世界任何地方都可以通过电邮收到6度简报。欢迎大家收看华尔街评论。我们现在给大家播报的主要内容包括：俄罗斯的反对派应该有不止一个领导者；联合国神圣的数字联盟；欧洲投资银行的支持将为欧盟小型核竞标增添火花；加沙地带迫在眉睫的饥荒；以色列必须决定他要去哪里，以及谁应该领导他去哪里。请大家收看：俄罗斯的反对派应该有不止一个领导者；外交政策。俄罗斯反对派人物阿列克谢·纳瓦尔尼的死亡凸显了将一个国家的民主化希望寄托在一个人身上的风险。纳瓦尔尼的死亡扼杀了他领导俄罗斯走向光明民主未来的梦想，俄罗斯民主化的任何可能性现在看起来更加遥远。纳瓦尔尼虽然是普京的勇敢对手，但他与推动俄罗斯入侵乌克兰的复仇主义倾向有很多共同之处。西方必须听取来自前俄罗斯殖民地如乌克兰关于俄罗斯反对派人物民族主义倾向的警告。西方应该专注于消除俄罗斯民族主义作为一种政治力量，而不是依赖于俄罗斯出现一个独特的未来领导人。将希望寄托在俄罗斯的一个人身上并不是一个新现象。在苏联晚期，西方对米哈伊尔·戈尔巴乔夫的帝国主义倾向视而不见，支持他的国内改革。同样，在克林顿政府下，西方将对俄罗斯民主化的希望寄托在了鲍里斯·叶利钦身上，尽管他具有威权主义民族主义倾向。西方必须认识到根深蒂固的俄罗斯民族主义，并听取来自前俄罗斯殖民地的见解和建议。随着纳瓦尔尼的死亡，西方有机会摆脱一个特定政治人物可以引领俄罗斯走向民主未来的观念。西方必须专注于扼杀俄罗斯民族主义的任何表现，并认识到它远不止于普京的支持者。西方不应该把所有筹码都压在一个改革者身上，尤其是如果这个改革者曾支持普京的侵略行为。纳瓦尔尼之死的遗产应该引导西方决策者走向一个民主的俄罗斯的正确道路。联合国神圣的数字联盟。美国企业研究所。最近，美国在市场开放数字贸易政策上逆转的政治背景和实质性影响现在越来越清晰。一张错综复杂的网络展开了，伪装、大胆的自信、舒适的政治交易以及与事实的随意关系都结合在一起，形成了一道迷人的炖菜。首先，在背景中，数字贸易政策从美国贸易代表办公室 USTR 外包给联邦贸易委员会。这并不是敌意收购，事实证明，美国贸易代表戴奇 Catherine Tai 完全支持联邦贸易委员会 FTC 主席控制或拆分大型科技公司的新布兰代斯主义决心。去年春天，戴奇在恶毒的反技术开放市场研究所 Open Market Institute 的一次演讲中指出，美国贸易代表办公室的主要任务是打击根深蒂固的私人和垄断权利。 虽然戴奇在随后的演讲和评论中表示支持联邦贸易委员会的做法，但颠覆美国数字政策的第一个实际举措是10月决定退出世界贸易组织关于电子商务的讨论，当时含糊其辞地引用了政策空间的需要。通过 Adobe Stock， 简单回顾一下，美国一直支持数据的自由流动，并抵制数据本地化要求，至少可以追溯到奥巴马政府。特朗普政府在美国、墨西哥、加拿大协定 ASEAN 中谈判了最强的语言数据自由化规则，在国会两党的压倒性支持下。应该指出的是，美墨加协定数字规则包含合法公共政策法规的明确例外情况，但在很大程度上被反对者忽视了。尽管美国贸易代表办公室最初淡化了世贸组织电子商务退出的重要性，并声称错误的国会已经听取了充分的简报，但最近几周，美国贸易代表戴奇对这一行动进行了全面的辩护，声称前几届政府的政策使美国工人贫困，如果没有更严格的监管，数字贸易规则将继续这一趋势。在试图将拜登的政策与中国国家主导的数据资源区分开来时，戴认为，在美国，我们所有人创建的所有数据都被一小撮极其强大、极其富有的公司。最近，他参加了在欧洲举行的竞争政策论坛，在论坛上，他赞扬了欧洲对数字政策的先发制人的监管方法。回到美国，戴奇现在认为，美国的监管政策、隐私立法、反垄断执法和消费者保护立法必须首先于进一步的数字贸易市场开放贸易规则。如前所述，这一论点忽略了 ASEAN 中规定的例外情况，以及其他国家也有类似的数据流和数据本地化保护措施。这些保护措施并未阻止国内法规。同样引人注目的是，尽管强烈反对对大型科技公司的渐进式攻击，但没有人认为目前的 ASEAN 语言会阻碍美国国内监管。至于国内联盟，很明显，美国贸易代表戴奇和他的政治工作人员与民主党的进步派以及反全球非政府组织如公共公民、重新思考贸易、美国劳工联合会和工业组织大会有着密切的联系。在数字贸易问题上，美国贸易代表办公室的声明往往反映了这些团体的负面论点。这并不奇怪，因为美国贸易代表办公室的主要工作人员和经济顾问都有劳工运动、国会贸易怀疑论者办公室以及公开市场研究所等组织的背景。需要明确的是，选举很重要。美国贸易代表办公室与以民主为导向的贸易怀疑论利益集团之间的亲密关系没有任何违法或不道德之处。但从自由市场数字的角度来看，上述统一战线构成了毒蛇的巢穴。只要感染美国的数字贸易政策，毒蛇的刺痛就会降低美国的数字竞争力。最后，具有讽刺意味的是，宣称支持小人物的拜登政府正在采取阻碍中小企业的立场，这些企业，而不是大型科技公司，更依赖开放的互联网以及商业和金融信息的自由流动来在国际市场上竞争。欧洲投资银行的支持将为欧盟小型核竞标增添火花。路透观点，欧洲投资银行行长何塞·曼努埃尔·冈萨雷斯·卡尔维诺 Jose Manuel González Calvino 表示，欧洲投资银行 EIB 需要为欧洲的下一代核反应堆提供资金，以减少碳排放。欧洲投资银行此前一直专注于为安全和升级项目提供资金，但卡尔维诺希望看到转向为更小、更便宜的反应堆提供资金。然而，欧洲投资银行每年210亿欧元、240亿美元的能源贷款预算不足以为这些反应堆的开发和部署提供资金，这将耗资数十亿欧元。欧盟委员会正在努力扩大该行业，并正在组建一个工业联盟。加沙地带迫在眉睫的饥荒。外交事务，根据饥荒审查委员会的评估，加沙地带正处于饥荒的边缘。联合国高级官员警告说，加沙地带的饥荒现在已经迫在眉睫。为了防止饥荒，战斗需要停止，以色列需要停止阻碍大规模救援行动的围困战术。援助机构被拒绝提供扩大规模的可行饥荒预防工作所需的资源、通行权和安全保障。以色列的军事行为和对援助团体施加的官僚障碍仍然是加沙地带人道救援工作的主要障碍。美国必须立即采取行动，将饥荒预防作为首要任务，并准备采取有意义的美国影响力，包括暂停军售，如果以色列政府不遵守的话。 这一行动的第一个组成部分必须是大规模推动通过援助运输恢复食物供应，并恢复传统上为加沙地带提供大部分食物的商业进口。这一努力还将严重依赖于扩大燃料进口，以重新启动面包店，并为家庭提供烹饪燃料。以色列必须决定他要去哪里，以及谁应该领导他去那里。外交事务。最近加沙战争凸显了以色列国防军 IDF 的战术能力和以色列政府的战略无能。虽然 IDF 表现出团结和力量，但政府未能做出关键决策，并未有效地处理与美国的关系。以色列的领导危机正达到关键阶段，拜登政府提出了一个新的战后地区秩序方案，条件接受两国解决方案，并与沙特阿拉伯正常化关系。以色列总理本雅明·内塔尼亚胡面临选择，接受该提议并冒失去极右派支持的风险，或拒绝该提议并冒失去与美国和其他阿拉伯国家的关系的风险。为了防止内塔尼亚胡进一步引领以色列陷入冲突，并欺骗政府和以色列公众，应该进行大选。由亚伊尔·拉皮德领导的反对党应该承诺有条件地接受拜登的提议，并拒绝极右派的议程。以色列需要回归现实、务实和可持续的行动方向，并重新获得道义高地。内塔尼亚胡对加沙地区未来的计划存在缺陷，缺乏对该地区合法治理的明确愿景。以色列必须接受哈马斯无法统治加沙，但也必须认识到加沙人将继续存在。在以色列在安全威胁事件发生时保持行动权的同时，由美国和阿拉伯盟友支持的复兴的巴勒斯坦权力机构应逐步负责加沙的民事管理。以色列现在需要改变。以色列公众对内塔尼亚胡失去了信任，国家需要新的领导来应对面临的挑战。应该进行大选，让人民决定前进的道路和谁将领导他们。这是一个需要果断行动的关键时刻。银行的热门新交易可能会对其他人造成损失，这一次是真的。路透观点。合成风险转移在新的巴塞尔中局规则下，由于银行面临昂贵的资本要求而越来越受欢迎。这种转移允许银行通过找到愿意承担首批损失的外部投资者来减少他们必须持有的对最高风险贷款的股权数量。然而，投资者要求在欧洲相当于所保险损失的 15% 和美国的 12% 的利息券，这对银行来说可能是昂贵的。虽然这种转移对银行来说风险很小，但投资者必须小心阅读条款细则。对于香港要走向全球化，可以从重视本地价值开始。南华早报评论版。香港政府计划举办大型活动和烟花表演以吸引游客的做法受到了业界的批评。尽管政府正在利用城市的文化和物质资源来推广香港，但其他部门却发布了削减这些资源的规定。批评者认为，政府需要专注于保护和推广香港独特的文化和物质遗产，以维持城市的声誉并吸引游客。印度制造可以拨号中国特色。路透观点。印度计划成为电子制造业的主要参与者，但其专注于低价值制造的做法阻碍了这一目标的实现。为了攀升制造业阶梯并吸引高价值制造业，印度应该为中国企业提供市场准入，并交换专业知识。这将需要官员们降低关税并向中国投资开放。尽管印度在成为手机进出口国和提高本地增值方面取得了进展，但仍落后于越南等国家。通过消除对中国投资的障碍并提供更好的智能手机市场准入，印度可以吸引必要的投资和专业知识，推动其制造业发展。特朗普对堕胎限制表示，我听说是15周，我还没有决定。国会山报观点。前总统特朗普表示，尽管有报道称他私下支持禁止堕胎的16周限制，但他尚未决定具体的禁止堕胎周数。特朗普此前回避了关于他是否会在连任后签署全国性堕胎禁令的问题，但他批评了民主党人支持晚期堕胎。他还声称，通过任命保守派最高法院大法官，他对终止罗伊诉韦德案负有责任。特朗普表示支持保护体外受精 IVF 的使用权。此前，阿拉巴马州法院裁定冷冻胚胎为人类，但一些共和党参议员最近阻止了旨在联邦层面保护 IVF 使用权的立法。加文·纽森表示，帕尼拉不免于加利福尼亚最低工资法。国会山报观点。加利福尼亚州州长加文· 纽森否认了泛美面包公司免除该州最低工资法的说法。此前有人声称该法案将使纽森竞选捐赠者泛美面包公司的所有者受益。根据彭博社的报道，面包和烘焙业的豁免条款将使亿万富翁格雷格·弗林受益。然而，纽森的一位发言人表示，泛美面包公司并未免除该法律的约束，因为像泛美这样的连锁面包店在将面团运送到餐厅烘焙之前，会在离店地点进行混合。各位观众，大家好，我是6度世界的6博士，你们的观察员。让我们总结一下今天的新闻。首先，我们谈到了俄罗斯反对派人物纳瓦尔尼的死亡，这一事件凸显了将一个国家的民主化希望寄托在一个人身上的风险。我们需要明白，民主化不应该依赖于单一的领导者，而应该建立在广泛的社会参与和制度建设之上。接下来，我们谈到了美国企业研究所对于美国数字贸易政策的评估。近来，美国在开放数字贸易政策上逆转的举动引起了人们的关注。我们需要警惕这种让步的背后是否存在利益交换和政治考量，并确保数字贸易政策的发展符合国家利益和公平原则。然后，我们谈到了欧洲投资银行支持欧盟小型核反应堆的计划。这一举措有助于减少碳排放，但同时也需要考虑到资金的供应问题。我们需要确保这些计划的可行性，同时注意到其他能源选择的影响。接着，我们谈到了加沙地带的粮食危机，饥荒已经迫在眉睫，并且需要停止战斗并提供援助。我们应该呼吁国际社会共同努力，解决这一人道危机，并确保援助能够顺利到达。最后，我们谈到了以色列的领导危机。以色列政府需要面对现实，寻找一个能够引领国家走向和平与稳定的领导者。大选可能是一个解决这个问题的方式，让人民选择自己的领导者，并寻求建立一个更好的未来。以上就是今天的新闻内容和我的观点。我们欢迎观众参与讨论，你有什么样的想法呢？谢谢您的收看。上面播报的内容是6度团队推荐的全球专业媒体、智库、政府机构和行业专家的最新报道、分析简报。更详细的内容，请大家去这些媒体、智库的网站阅读。这些内容并不一定反映6度简报的立场，亦不能作为任何决策的建议。6度团队由专业媒体人、学者、科学家组成的独立新型媒体，大家可以根据自己的专业要求订阅各种简报。网址是6dobrief.com， 您在世界任何地方都可以通过电邮收到6度简报。
观众朋友们好，欢迎大家来到本期的思想先驱报节目现场。我们说呀，人口迁徙实际上是过去这个人类整个发展历史中的重要的一个环节，以此带动的移民以及人口的流动，也是资源互享的重要的一个环节。每年世界上都有一次大规模的人口迁徙，这是什么日子？
春节。
的确，每年的春节感恩节那人少多了1年1度的全球范围内最大规模的人口迁徙就是中国的春节假期旅游。据说这一年可能是要带动90亿人次的这样的一个出行计划。但是有的时候经济学家在看到春节度假这样的假期的时候，往往更关注到的是这一次春节假期的交通和旅游数据可能会给中国未来的经济政策规划带来怎样的启示。在和10几年相比，最近几年整个春节假期出行有一个特点，就是特大城市的交通流量会减小，而省内的交通会更加的密集。因此南华早报有一位投资人就写了一篇文章，就说中国现在其实有2/3的人口都是居住在城市。我们看到整个城市化进程基本已经到了最后一个环节。接下来应该做的是什么呢？就是区域规划的微调到底呢城乡差距怎样解决，怎样缓解大城市的人口问题。那我们看到在过去一段时间，不管是北京上海广州还是深圳人口基本上已经出现了一个饱和或者是顶峰的状态。现在有很多年轻人离开了这一些特大城市，去寻找比如说经济适用房或者是更加平衡的这样的一种生活方式。
为什么这个情况很具有前瞻性呢？我在几个月以前看这个美国的媒体，也讲到了一种现象， 就是原来吧，就是一个乡下的一个小镇上的年轻人要到城里面来啊，成为一个电影的题材。美国就是这样完成城市化过程。后来啊，我就发现有一些人到了纽约之后，到了大城市之后啊，发现适应不了，又回去了。
对。
但是最近还有一个现象，本来就已经在大城市里面生活的挺好的，发现现在换一个地方让自己更舒服，这就是美国的一些中心城市啊，像奥斯汀这些地方热闹的一个很重要的原因。
对，和平先生啊，你说的还真的是。那么这一位作者啊，很快就把美国出现的这一种像2、3线城市倒流的现象与中国进行了比较。那我们看到啊，第一是很多年轻人现在更喜欢一种半自由的这样的一种职业状态，希望呢生活与职业的平衡啊，这一点更加的重要。同时啊，从年轻人从事的行业看，我们看到有很多人呢进行远程工作，其实现在也随着互联网的普及是越来越方便了。你可以服务最大城市人口，但你不一定真的要住在这个最大的城市。所以啊，现在出现的一个现象就是啊，不管是在武汉还是成都，有一系列的内陆城市正在崛起。那么像深圳和广州这样的沿海大城市出现了饱和的现象之后，附近的东莞和佛山反而是迎来了一批年轻高素质的移民。另外我们也看到啊，中国整个的这个交通啊相当的便利，而这样一个互联互通的基础设施也让城市之间的距离啊其实是在无形之中缩短了，尽管物理型的距离可能没有变。其实啊，跟美国知识型人才从沿海向内陆转移啊，也是如出一辙。那我们看到疫情过后啊，基本上整个全球都出现了远程办公，还有这个城市密度的重新分配这样的一个趋势。但是在中国和美国的这样一种看似类似的趋势背后，中国的因素又不太一样。首先就是中国的基础设施是推动这种人口倒流的重要的原因之一啊。那我们就看到作者特别讲到了，现在这个粤港澳大湾区啊，有这样一个互联互通的城市系统，有很多的超级车站连接了很多的干线，这呢是重要的一点。另外呀，在中国这样的一个特定的背景之下，内陆城市成为具有吸引力的发展点，也跟政府的政策有很大的关系。现在也在着重培养中部城市、内陆城市以及一些西部甚至是东北部城市新的就业机会，并且给企业落户一些补贴。类似的话题啊，我们详细在城市规划区域这个话题再讲。那同时，这一次的人口迁徙和过去的人口迁徙、春节返乡还有一个非常大的不同，就是啊，现在外来务工人员是回家，但是啊，往往他们不是直接回到农村，而是现在在家乡附近的新兴城市中心定居了。从数据中也可以看到这一点，就是去年实际上中国的农村人口是继续减少，但是城市人口是增加了1200万。也就是现在大城市我不是回到乡下去，而是在大城市和乡下之间的这一些我们叫做2、3线城市或者是中小城市，找到某一种平衡适宜的这样的一个趋势。那我们说中国有多少农民工呢？有3亿农民工。根据作者的测算呢，到2022年底，他们的平均年龄是42岁。由于啊，在他们所工作的城市，往往呢是没有充分的社会服务的，所以他们在这些城市啊，往往只能是暂停居留。现在拥有本地户口的居民比例，北京是64%，而深圳只有33%。即使你是清华、北大这样学校的毕业生啊，也很难成为北京户口的所有者。所以之前有人说啊，说北京一个户口价值百万千万，说的就是这样的一个道理。而中国的大城市啊，一直是在法律法规上，在一般的习惯以及传统上是不欢迎也不允许逾期居留的农民工的。但是小城市反而是有更大的空间，这就是为什么现在更多的人没有办法在大城市落户，反而在中小城市可以吃到当地的人才红利。近些年来，我们看到中国是放宽了在户口方面的政策，让很多人在落户方面有了更多的选择，特别是在2、3线城市和中小城市。所以这就为很多的农民工，为很多从大城市逃离的年轻人提供了一个在中小城市落户的机会，同时这也为中小城市进一步的发展提供了更多的前景。那么我们说啊，有一些人呐，是原来梦想在大城市定居，现在发现啊，大城市的房地产价格、消费水平以及生活成本，包括整个工作的压力，并不适合自己。随着整个区域重新规划的形成，或许2、3线城市成为了他们更加 好的这样的一个家园。那么现在啊，中国在整个我们叫做城市密集群重新部署方面啊，在长三角方面是有所部署的，包括提到啊，在上海附近的2、3线城市要以地区为区化，渐渐放宽户口政策。那么在粤港澳大湾区呢，现在有更多的协调区域发展这一方面的举动。但是作者也就提出了一个问题：如果我们从春节期间的人员流动状况看到哪一些2、3线城市吸引了最多的人口，是不是在这一些城市我们也可以发现重构区域的思路啊？因此我们看到数据呀，可以给你非常丰富的信息。数据不仅仅是可以帮助你撒谎，或者是对于经济运行的状况进行向外部的某一种宣示。如果从这一种交通模式中获取的数据，为政策制定者可以提供更多的洞察，让他们能够了解到人口迁移的多项动态。或许这是中国未来智慧决策的第一步啊。那么其实呢，在这个叫经济学研究界也有很多利用人口迁徙的大数据来进行相关研究的这样的资料。那比如说之前何明先生特别推荐给我来自哈佛大学、来自布朗大学的经济学教授，通过人口迁徙或者叫做搬家的数据来看，美国哪一个城市是实现美国梦这个最好的这样的一个途径。那么实际上这也是利用大数据通过人口变迁的模式，并且进一步追踪这一些人口在变迁之前和变迁之后他们的工资水平和受教育程度的变化，来了解到整个国家近眼的这样的一个趋势。那么今天呢，我们简单为大家讲述这样一个话题。何明先生，这就涉及到了我们平时经常讨论的一个话题，就是中国的区域部署和重新规划那么资源上的重新部署，我们经常听说什么东电西输、南水北调，但是在整个城市集群，在整个平衡区域发展方面，实际上呢，现在还仅仅是刚刚起步而已。除了刚才我们谈到的有关于户籍政策、户口政策的放开之外，还有哪一些可以切实实现区域发展不平衡的某一种调和？
我觉得在过去改革开放几十年来，就是中国政府在城镇化方面是做了很多的事情，因为他们知道中国要在有限的资源之下得到个比较高速的发展，过于传统的那种人民的分布的方式是很糟糕的，所以必须要走城镇化的道路。所以在有时候走了一些激进的路子把旧的房子拆掉，然后形成一个定居点。实际上哪怕是在毛泽东时代他们都这样做过，就是那些地方有的我还去参观过就是原来的房子都是分散的，大家都集中在一起一样的房子大小，一样的公共这个运作系统。但是后来那些事情呢很快就摧毁了，原因就是呢，第一，那些房子太简陋了；第二呢，就是那些房子并没有配套而来的商业的发展和公共设施，它没有真正的走向城镇化。哪怕是在李克强总理时期推动了所谓城镇化，后来都发现很多地方都是空的，还是空的。但是中国有一个巨大的一个差距，这个差距呢就成为了今天中国的经济的动力，那就是城乡差距。有时候落后是一段很悲酸的历史，但是对于现在来讲，解决落后问题又是一段经济的动力。那么多的年轻人在80年代的开始引向城市，我当时还接到这个指示要去采访这些人。当时采访这些人呢，主要是要描述这些人对城市造成的破坏，对城市造成的拥挤。当时最著名的就是广州火车站。广州火车站很多人在那个地方都有很糟糕的这种记忆，无论你是北京人还是广东人，因为那个地方是犯罪非常的严重经常东西被偷。我在采访的过程中间，我的东西也被偷了都被偷了。但是大白天我看到这么多的青年农民，就是睡在他们自己搭的那个简陋的被子底下，因为他们根本住不起酒店，他们也找不到工作。他们当时找工作只有一个条件，你给我一口饭吃就可以了。后来才慢慢知道有这么一点薪水，所以当时给这些人有一个词叫盲流。盲流就是盲目的流。但是我后来写了一篇完全相反的说法，你看我说的这是滞留。为什么呢？因为你在原来的家乡那种那种低的收入的水平，那种即使是你勤奋的不得了， 你的那个收入跟城里面一年跟城镇里面，哪怕是你很低的薪水，都比不上1个月。所以我说，稍微有一点的智力的人都应该离开那个乡下，这就是所谓后来形成的农民工，而不再是的这个盲流，成为了中国城市化建设的最重要的一个基础力量。因为经济的高速发展，原来的工人、原来的人口已经不能满足那个劳动的需求了，而这批人。有的人后来是很成功的，甚至成为企业家，成为收入很不错的人。但是也有一些人啊，曾经悟到了一些道理，开始回到家乡，回到2线城市、3线城市，他可能就开启了他的事业。这就是有一些人他完全没有眼光，到了大城市之后，增加了他的眼光，然后再回去的时候。在某一些2线城市、3线城市的时候，你就发现，在2线城市、3线城市，他可能就是一个领导者，他可能就是一个领袖型的一等人物啊，这是中国很可喜的变化。虽然这个速度非常之快，但是呢，它还带有一点自我演化的特征。当自我演化的特征和政府的辅助相结合的时候，这就是今天的2线城市3线城市、4线城市开始可能会出现为了大家预想不到的。不能说繁荣，不能说那种经济高速的膨胀，因为经济今天在中国毕竟是在一个调整过程中间。但是如果你慢慢几年之后你就会发现这些城市可能同样是生活到很多对生活很满意的人。
好，谢谢何明先生的介绍。
很长啊，抱歉。
对呀，谢谢何明先生的介绍。但刚才何明先生讲的是有关于农民工这样的一个话题啊。无独有偶，我特别注意到来自彭博商业周刊有一篇报道，讲的也是中国最近出现的超大级城市，还有呢相对来讲比较次级城市之间的人口逆流的现象。不过他介绍的是非常特别的2个地方，就是深圳和香港之间出现的这一种逆流状况啊。我们提到深港通，大家可能首先想到的是深圳和香港之间的这样的一个运输，但是实际上现在深港通还是另外一种服务的代名词，就是为在香港工作的专业人士和白领精英在深圳找房子，不仅仅是房子，包括外卖这个晚餐都有一条龙的相关的服务。来自彭博商业周刊的报道就介绍了一位在香港工作了6年的这样的一位金融界医疗专业领域的这样的一位人士。他就说我在香港是生活了6年，在去年的5月才搬到了深圳，结果发现周围的很多人都已经开始这样做了，或者也在打听如何这样做，其中很多是在香港做金融的，也有学生，甚至有从香港搬到深圳来的家庭，希望给孩子未来的成长有一个更加宽敞的环境。这些人到底是怎样的一批人？他们为什么现在选择从香港搬出来，工作继续在香港，但是把家却安在深圳呢？其实最后一个最根本的一个因素还是交通方式的改善。过去你从深圳到香港要公交车、地铁、渡轮，
还有过海关，
要90分钟才能够到。现在你坐的这个空调子弹车的猎头就不到半个小时就到了，而且没有任何的还快，而且没有任何的延误。那香港的这个西九龙站何明先生，你知道旁边是什么？摩根士坦利德意志银行就很多的金融公司办公的地点还有和深圳的这个金融中心福田之间的这一条铁路，在2018年底其实就已经开放了。现在还有一个新延长的一个东铁线，就通过罗湖港岸直接连接到了香港的中部还有深圳。那么现在即使是通勤者到两边的出入境检查站的这个过程也变得非常的迅速。当然了，背后还有一个因素，就是香港的租金大幅度的上涨。为什么香港的租金上涨的这么快呢？有一部分是因为过去1年中吸引人才的新的签证政策，导致大量的内地人涌向了香港。那么这个顶尖的高才签证呢，去年呢是向内地公民已经发放了大概5万份，结果一下子就拉高了整个香港的这样一个拥挤空间
对，如果5万份一个人还好，如果是有个家庭2口人，那就是10万人，对吧？
对，是这样的。
有个小孩，那就是10多万人。
对。那么我们说的这一位年轻的白领在彭博商业周刊文章里面所介绍的，他在深圳是租了一套大概700平方英尺的一个小2居室，每月的房租是多少呢？大概6000块钱人民币。他在香港的1居室只有29平方米，每个月的价格是多少呢 每个月的价格是香港的大概是3倍左右。也就是说，它的房子的面积大了2-3倍，租金是变成了原来的1/3。那这对于一位通勤只需要30分钟就可以到的人来说，那就是非常这样划算的一笔打算啊。那么所以现在我们就看到，这样的现象越来越多了。搬迁到深圳，为什么这个香港的家庭也会搬迁到深圳呢？他们往往是看中了在整个大陆这个不像香港这么拥挤，不像香港这么繁忙，孩子有一个这个室外的空地可以玩耍，认为呢在深圳是更加便宜或者说更加宜居的这样的一个地方。但是这也不是没有问题，其中也涉及到几个麻烦。首先一个是很多的大陆公民，那么他们呢一般是符合香港低所得税的条件。那么知道香港最高的税率是15%，而在内地是45%。现在的规定是，如果你在纳税年度内在香港定居超过180天，就可以按照香港居民的税收标准。但如果你现在搬家到深圳，这个到底怎么算啊？所以现在还存在这样的一个问题。还有一个问题是什么呢？就是香港永久居留权的相关的规定。那么申请条件目前是在香港连续居住不少于7年，但是你说你要是在香港工作，但是你住又不在香港住，你这个到底怎么算啊？所以我们看到过去在制定这一些，
你刚才讲的这个7年，就是有一些可能网友不太知道，
对，
就是说其实你不管持什么签证到这个香港，如果你在香港连续居住7年，你就有资格申请成为香港居民。
对。是这样的，但是我们说过去制定这一些法律法规的时候，不知道今天会出现这样高速的变化。过去也没有那么多人在这个香港上班，每天晚上跑回到深圳。所以现在既然有这样的一种生活方式的需求，似乎有关的法律法规在税收和移民政策上还是存在着一定的这样的一些不确定性所以呢，这是一种新现象，但是我们也看到新现象也带来了新的麻烦和新的法律上的灰色地带。所以我们也看到未来这个现象到底怎样解决。但不管怎么说，随着交通工具的愈加发达，随着远程办公的愈加方便，随着大城市更加拥挤，再随着落户政策的打开，想必未来呢，在整个中国出现新一轮的人口的重新配置，也是在眼前就可能会出现变化的时刻。而随着整个人口的重新配置，是不是企业的分配、人才的流动、大学的设置和新的经济增长点、新的就业机会也会出现重新的配置？那么这也是一个政策和人口自由流动和市场自由选择相结合的一个问题。或许未来中国可以作为人口重新流动重要的一个试验田。以上就是本期思想先驱报我们为大家介绍的内容，希望对你有帮助。下期我们再会。
谢谢。
万事不求人，私人助理、私人顾问时代来临了。六度万事，万事相助，超强博士群不断奉献专项服务，信息、财经、健康、文娱、教育、旅游、消费、科技、美食，让您的生活品质全线升级。六度世界现在体验，请去3w.6度.world。
限时免费期间，全体注册网友免费使用付费版的高级功能如下：支持论坛搜索，免费画图。第一步，点击右上角最左边的机器人符号开始对话，像图片中红框中的那样。第二步，如图选择六度万事，我们未来将推出更多的 AI 供大家选择。然后就可以与六博士悄悄畅谈了。还支持论坛内部信息搜索哦。您还可以让六博士做你的助手，帮你绘制漂亮图片。最后可以点击添加好友进来，一起与六博士工作。一起来3w.6度.world 尝试吧。
大家好，您现在收看的是来自六度世界的六度挑战，这是一个 AI 驱动的新型媒体，网友可以参与讨论，也可以向万能的六博士提出你能想出的任何问题。网址是6do world， 节目的内容是两会，中国经济怎么救？
两会前瞻，中国经济怎么救？上一届两会，中国把2023年经济增长目标定为 5% 左右，最后官方称实际增长 5.2%。不过，专家向 DW 表示，去年真实的经济成长恐怕不到 1%。 这一次两会，中国总理李强将首度发表政府工作报告，他会喊出多高的增长目标，又将提出什么样的经济措施？德国之声中文网两会全国人大政协会议前夕，中国国家统计局3月1日发布数据，显示今年2月的制造业采购经理人指数 PMI 为 49.1， 连续第5个月低于50的景气指标。2月29日，中共中央总书记习近平主持政治局会议，讨论政府工作报告稿，再度强调巩固和增强经济回升向好态势等说法。3月4日至5日，被形容为党中央橡皮图章的两会将登场，中国国务院总理李强将首度发表工作报告，成为本届的重头戏。事实上，中共中央去年12月的经济工作会议提及畅想中国经济光明论，以决定今年两会的基调。会上也将公布众所瞩目的2024年中国国内生产总值 GDP 增长目标，但无论这个数字是多少，可能都难以扭转外界近几年来对中国经济的信心低迷。2024年中国两会有哪些看点？经济增长目标定多高？人大会议上政府工作报告如何确定经济增长目标是最大的关注点。路透社报道称，在去年的中共中央经济工作会议中，大多数参与者认可将2024经济成长目标设定在 5% 左右，与2023年一致。另外，从地方两会的报道看，北京、上海、广州等一线城市，以及广东、江苏、山东、浙江等省今年的 GDP 成长目标均在 5% 至 5.5%。经济增长目标 GDP 能否保5，是判断中国经济表现的常见基准。据北京清大、中国科学院等中国的机构研判，今年中国 GDP 可增长约 5% 以上。北大国发院经济学家姚洋接受中国媒体访问时更主张，今年经济增速目标要定的比去年高一些，建议定到 5.5%， 释放积极信号。海外学者对中国经济的预期多半较低。位于台湾的中华经济研究院专家王国臣向 DW 表示，今年估计中国经济成长大约 4.6%。消费不会像去年这么好，因为去年是在一个比较低的基期上反弹，进出口贸易的部分可能会稍微好转，可是不会到明显的反弹。对于投资能否撑得住今年的 GDP， 王国臣亦表示存疑。如果政府的投资没有大幅提升，外商也就会更趋保守，因为你的 5% 事实上是喊出来的，设在 5% 之后没有实际的作为，那么这个 5% 就是空的，所以我们会希望看到在两会的时候更大刀阔斧的一些财政支出。危机四伏的中国经济，房企暴雷。8月初，中国又一家房地产开发商巨头碧桂园面临违约风险。该公司有2笔美元计价的债务，8月8日逾期未支付利息。作为少数尚未出现违约的中国大型房企之一，碧桂园的暴雷是对本已脆弱的中国房地产市场的又一打击。在本次房地产危机中首先触礁的恒大集团，则于8月17日依美国破产法向美国法院申请破产保护。恒大的负债高达3300亿美元，其在2021年底发生违约，导致中国各地出现大批未完工的烂尾楼。大多数分析师认为，未来几个月内，中国的房产价格和销量仍将进一步下滑。美国斯坦福大学中国经济与制度研究中心学者许成刚更不看好今年的经济成长，因为过去几年的状况并不容乐观。官方的报告是，2022年增长率是 3. 点几，2023年是 5. 点几，实际的情况是，2022年的增长是负的，2023年的增长几乎是0%，不到 1%。许成刚预期，今年北京会定超过 5% 的 GDP 增长目标，但真实增长会低于 3%。他向 DW 解释，在中国经济遭遇严峻困难之际，北京期盼电动车、锂电池、太阳能板等新3样，再加上人工智能、半导体、生物医药领域，能够成为新的经济增长点。然而，在他看来，依靠这些东西来改变中国经济的整体是没可能的，因为即使高科技产业前景可期，当前对 GDP 的贡献却不高。相较之下，占中国 GDP 比例大的房地产业一直在走下坡。替房地产业开药方。房地产业原本是中国经济支柱， 一般估计其上下游产业链总计占中国 GDP 约2%至3%。经历了20年的扩张，中国房地产业如今债台高筑，各地出现大量烂尾楼与卖不掉的空屋，房企在债务危机里越陷越深。自2021年起，房企接连爆发违约，且今年恐怕会再有新一波暴雷潮。这次两会前夕，先是恒大集团1月底遭香港法院勒令清盘，接着碧桂园也在2月收到债权人的清盘呈请，这两起重大事件进一步对产业前景蒙上阴影。本届两会的观察重点之一，正在于官方针对房地产业将提出何种新的政策解药，来治疗中国经济问题的一大源头。河南烂尾房项目残局难收，近期各地房企白名单陆续公布，碧桂园亦称有上百个建案项目名列其上。据官方规划，白名单由地方政府拟定，提供给银行，最后是否发放贷款仍交由银行评估。有分析指，企业不保证能获得融资，且即使得到资金，对于其庞大债务而言也是杯水车薪。另一方面，政府也透过降低首购的抵押贷款利率等措施，来降低买房门槛，但对房市的刺激效果亦不大。台湾学者王国成主张，政府应出手终结房地产业的恶性循环，因此他关注北京会否加大印钞或发国债，把房地产的负债全部收归国有，并且由国家承诺把烂尾楼全部盖完，否则现在谁敢买房子？海外中国经济学家许成刚则不认为这次两会能提出真正有效的解决办法，而此前北京开出的药方不仅仅是治标不治本，反而有如癌症一样让问题恶化。他认为北京很害怕金融危机，因此以各种补贴方式替企业注资，阻止企业资不抵债而破产，但这只能起暂时作用，最后甚至把企业的危机积累变成全经济的危机。面对这个病怎么办？是你拖着，一直把它拖下去呢，还是说你一次性把它解决了？许成刚指出，政府虽设法用行政手段暂时冻结了房地产的价格，阻止其大幅下降，但产品不降价更加卖不掉，企业没有收入，整个行业遇到的问题就永远得不到解决。中国房地产商碧桂园2024年2月28日表示，27日遭债权人提出了清盘呈请。消息一出，碧桂园28日在香港股价下跌约 12%。在中国政府欲重建各界对房地产业的信心之际，此事也对经济前景蒙上阴影。此前，碧桂园是为数不多的没有出现资金问题的中国大型开发商之一，但2023年上半年亏损达到了67亿美元。9月中，碧桂园获得债权人的批准，将6支境内债券的偿还期限延长3年。中国房地产商碧桂园2024年2月28日表示，27日遭债权人提出了清盘呈请。消息一出，碧桂园28日在香港股价下跌约 12%。在中国政府欲重建各界对房地产业的信心之际，此事也对经济前景蒙上阴影。此前，碧桂园是为数不多的没有出现资金问题的中国大型开发商之一，但2023年上半年亏损达到了67亿美元。9月中，碧桂园获得债权人的批准，将6支境内债券的偿还期限延长3年。盛极而哀，中国房产业风雨飘摇，房企接连暴雷。中国房地产商碧桂园2024年2月28日表示，27日遭债权人提出了清盘呈请。消息一出，碧桂园28日在香港股价下跌约 12%。在中国政府欲重建各界对房地产业的信心之际，此事也对经济前景蒙上阴影。此前，碧桂园是为数不多的没有出现资金问题的中国大型开发商之一，但2023年上半年亏损达到了67亿美元。9月中，碧桂园获得债权人的批准，将6支境内债券的偿还期限延长3年。能否提振外资信心？德国莫卡托中国研究中心 Marix 首席经济学家曾林 Max J. Zenglein 向 DW 表示，今年的两会预料是相当乏味的。基本上，
首先，我得说，咱们在谈论这份关于中国经济状态和未来变革的文章时，这名中国总理李强真是个神奇的人啊！他凭借着他那令人惊叹的胡萝卜和棍子战术，本人不禁想为他鼓掌。 在他掌舵的过去的几年里，他赋予了我们一种发展规划乐观的观点，即使多数专家认为中国的经济增速实际上可能低于1%，甚至有可能降为0。然而，他仍然可以毫不犹豫地强调将努力确保经济增长。人们不能否认，他真的很擅长做出一副乐天派的样子。同时，我必须指出，中国政府的一贯手法是，对于每一位不满意他们的决策的人，都会以高于市场预期的 GDP 增长目标来敷衍，并通过各种方式开展经济逆袭。然而，问题在于，大多数民众将信任寄托于政府，期待其应对所有挑战。然而事实上，他们除了畅想中国经济光明论，并没有实质性的经济疗法。然而，文章中引述台湾学者王国辰的话，让人胆战心惊。他暗示说，如果中国政府的投资没有大幅度提升，外商的观望态度可能会越来越保守。这么说，难道中国政府想借此鼓励更多的黄牛买卖吗？接下来，让我们来谈谈中国经济的另一个重要领域——房地产业。令人惊讶的是，中国的规模庞大，表面看来充满活力的房地产市场却饱受挫折。根据报道，中国的房地产行业像是被画上了个巨大的目标标签，成为了今年经济危险信号的主要源头。脆弱的房地产市场加上债务危机的威胁，似乎暗示了中国房地产业的结构性问题，即供应过剩与需求萎靡。中国政府的白名单计划只是一场游戏，它并不能为这个问题提供解决方案，反而可能会使市场环境更加恶化。这个方案可能只是将问题从一个地方转移到另一个地方，而并没有解决根本问题。虽然许成刚等外国学者对中国政府在今年两会上将提出有效解决方案表示怀疑，但我为他们的挑战精神和对真相追求的精神点赞。他们以冷静和理智的视角观察中国经济的现状，他们的观点像是一杯冰凉的啤酒，清爽而又犀利。总而言之，这篇文章详细剖析了中国经济的现状和前景，同时揭示了国内外专家和学者的不同观点和担忧。虽然这篇文章有些让人心情沉重，但我们必须要承认，中国的经济形势与许多其他国家一样，都面临着挑战和不确定性。然而，正如许成刚所言，问题的关键不在于是否可以避免困境，而在于面对困境时，我们会如何解决和应对。我期待未来看到更多的政策变革和求变，因为只有变革才能推动中国走向真正的经济繁荣。
亲爱的观众朋友们，今天我们一起来了解了中国经济近况和未来的挑战。在即将到来的两会上，中国总理李强将发表政府工作报告，提出经济增长目标和相应的措施。然而，我们也看到了外界对中国经济的担忧和质疑。在过去的几年中，中国经济的增速一直备受争议。尽管官方数据显示经济增长稳定，但许多专家和学者认为实际增长率可能远低于官方公布的数字。今年的两会，中国政府将公布2024年的 GDP 增长目标，但无论这个数字是多少，都难以改变外界对中国经济的信心低迷。房地产业是中国经济的一个重要领域，但近年来面临着严峻的挑战。中国政府一直试图通过各种手段来稳定房地产市场，但供应过剩和需求不振的问题仍然存在。许多分析师认为，房地产业的问题需要更加深入和系统的解决方案，而不仅仅是临时性的政策调整。外国企业对中国市场的前景也存在担忧。在过去的一年中，许多外企对中国市场的表现感到失望。与此同时，中国政府也在采取一系列措施来保护本土企业的利益，给外企带来了更多的挑战。尽管面临着诸多挑战，我们也要看到中国经济的潜力和机遇。中国拥有世界上最大的市场规模，拥有强大的科技和创新能力，这些都是中国经济长期发展的重要支撑。关键在于，我们需要更加开放和透明的市场环境，以吸引更多的投资和创新。最后，我想鼓励大家参与讨论。你对中国经济的前景有什么看法？你认为政府应该采取什么措施来促进经济发展？请在评论中留下你的想法和问题， 谢谢观看，我们下期再见。谢谢大家收看6度世界。这是一个由科学家、经济学家、媒体人、工程技术人员合作建立的新型媒体，网友与6度 AI 参与合作完成各种内容，这些内容不能作为任何决策或法律的意见。这是一个新型的试验性媒体方式，我们希望得到大家的支持，修正错误。网友可以参与讨论，也可以向万能的6博士提出你能想出的任何问题。6度世界网址是6度 World， 请介绍给你的亲朋好友。
大家好，欢迎关注华尔街电视频道。本视频录制时间为美东时间3月1日。这期热点深度来关注越南共产党正遭遇中共9号文件外泄时刻。人权组织88计划发表报告说，越南共产党中央2023年7月发布了一份秘密指令，将几乎所有国际商业与合作定性为国家安全威胁。媒体 BBC 报道称，88计划近日取得一份越南共产党中央委员会政治局的官方文件，其中要求党内人士严正看待外国敌对及反动势力，并提高警觉。BBC 的报道提到，越南曾因坐在战略阴影中静静无闻而闻名，其领导人几乎不为世界所知，但现在却受到所有人的追捧。去年，美国总统拜登和中国国家主席习近平都访问了越南，美国将其与越南的关系提升到了最高水平及全面战略伙伴关系。越南已经同意了18个现有或计划中的自由贸易安排，人们正在寻求其在气候变化、供应链韧性、疫情准备和一系列其他问题上的合作。在日益加剧的美中竞争中，越南被视为重要的地区性角色。在南中国海，越南与中国争夺一些岛屿群的主张，并且被视为制造业外包的最佳替代选择。而同时，没有改变的是共产党对权力的铁腕控制，以及对所有形式的政治表达的控制。越南是世界上仅存的5个共产主义单一政党国家之一，不允许有政治反对派存在，意见人士经常被监禁。近年来，镇压行动愈发严厉，党的高层决策被笼罩在秘密之中。然而，一份来自越南最高决策机构中央委员会政治局的内部文件泄露出来，罕见地揭示了该党最高领导人对所有这些国际伙伴关系的看法。这份名为24号指令的文件是由致力于越南人权的88计划组织获得的。这份秘密文件的真实性尚未得到官方证实，但88计划称，至少有45家官方媒体和18份政府文件提到其名称和日期。报告补充道，24号指令揭示了越南领导人对国家融入世界的态度极为矛盾，并为他们偏执的想法提供了罕见的视角。它是2023年7月由越共政治局发布的，其中包含了有关越南通过其日益增长的国际联系所面临的来自敌对和反动势力的国家安全威胁的严峻警告。24号指令认为，这些行为将增加他们的破坏和内部政治转型活动，形成公民社会联盟和网络、独立工会，为国内政治反对派团体的形成创造条件。该文件敦促各级党员要严格对抗这些影响。他警告说，尽管越南表面上取得了经济上的成功，在经济、金融、货币、外国投资、能源、劳动方面的安全并不牢固，存在着对外国依赖、操纵和某些敏感领域的潜在风险。这是警告性的内容。在越南政府的公开声明中，从未出现过如此不安全的声音。那么这意味着什么呢？本·斯旺顿是88计划的联合主任，他毫不怀疑24号指令标志着对人权活动人士和公民社会团体进行更加严厉打压的开始。他引用了文件末尾对党员的9项指示，要求他们监控社交媒体以打击虚假宣传，不允许独立政治组织的形成，并警惕利用与国际机构增加接触来煽动颜色革命和街头革命的人。本·斯旺顿面具被摘掉了。越南的统治者表示，他们打算把侵犯人权作为一种政策。并非所有人都这么看。新南威尔士大学政治学荣休教授、越南问题知名学者卡莱尔·泰尔表示，24号指令并不意味着对公民社会和亲民主活动人士进行新一轮内部镇压，而更像是一种常态，即对这些活动人士的持续镇压。他提到指示的时机， 该文件发布于美国和越南达成更高级别合作伙伴关系后不久，也就是在拜登总统访问越南仅2个月之前。他表示，这是一个重大决定，由于党内人担心新冠疫情的影响和中国经济放缓将阻止越南实现其目标，即在2045年前成为一个发达的高收入国家。他需要与美国建立更紧密的关系，将其快速增长的经济推向下一个水平。党内的强硬派担心美国不可避免地会鼓励越南的亲民主情绪，并威胁到党的权力垄断。泰尔教授认为，24号指令中采用的对抗性语言旨在向党内强硬派保证不会发生这种情况。他认为，决定让阮富仲总书记亲自签署新的合作伙伴关系，不仅是因为他是越南最有权势的政治人物，而且还是一个已知的共产主义理论家，这也是出于同样的目的。24号指令清楚地展示了越南共产党领导人面临的困境，因为该国正在成为全球制造业和贸易强国。越南没有足够大的实力像中国那样封锁自己在防火墙之后。像 Facebook 这样的社交媒体平台在越南很容易获得，越南需要外国投资和技术来保持快速增长，不能承担与世隔绝的代价。越南已经同意了一些自由贸易协定，比如2020年达成的与欧盟的大型协定，这些协定附带有人权和劳工权利条款。越南还批准了国际劳工组织 ILO 的一些公约，尽管值得注意的是，其中没有包括要求集会自由的公约。但24号指令表明，越南似乎不愿意遵守这些条款。文件中，党要求对独立工会的设立明确限制，要求官员们严格试点建立员工组织，在参加国际劳工组织保护结社自由和组织权的公约时，积极采取主动措施，确保党的持续领导、党的基层组织的领导和各级政府管理。换句话说，对国际劳工组织的合作表示赞成，对任何不受党控制的工会坚决否定。本·斯旺顿认为，24号指令表明，越南的西方合作伙伴在人权或劳工权利方面的协议不过是一张掩盖政治体制无法尊重个人权利的礼貌遮羞布，掩盖了他们与政治体制所达成的协议。他问，哪些公民社会团体将被允许监督这些自由贸易协定？当我们已经看到6名环保和气候活动人士因荒谬的理由被监禁，而此时越南刚刚与西方政府签署了一项巨额能源转型合作伙伴关系。几十年前，一党制的马克思列宁主义国家被许多人认为是未来，为世界最贫困的社会带来现代化、进步和经济公平。如今，他们已成为历史上的异常。即使中国的经济成功备受称赞，也几乎没有人将其视为政治模式。越南的领导人希望完成一种西法，他们长期以来一直严格控制着人民的政治生活，同时让他们接触来自海外的一切想法和灵感，希望这些将保持经济火焰的明亮。或许这个24号指令会让中国观察人士想到曾经的9号文件，关于当前意识形态领域情况的通报，简称9号文件，是2013年4月22日由中共中央办公厅印发的一份旨在通报意识形态领域情况的内部文件。该文件在2013年8月20日于《纽约时报》报道中被披露。该文件的主旨为警告中国共产党，若不能根除7大危险，权力将可能旁落。《纽约时报》在报道中称，这个序号是中共中央办公厅今年4月印发该文件时定下的。从4名接近中共高级官员的消息人士那里证实了它的真实性，其中包括党报的1名编辑。文件中称，要确保新闻媒体的领导权始终掌握在同以习近平同志为总书记的党中央保持一致的人手中。根据《纽约时报》9号文件中，第一个被提及的危险是西方宪政民主，其他包括倡导人权的普世价值，西方倡导的媒体独立和公民社会，亲市场的新自由主义，以及对中共痛苦过去的虚无主义式的批评。该报说，这个向中共干部发出的内部警告显示，习近平虽然在公开场合显得充满信心，但却惧怕中共受制于经济放缓、民众对腐败的愤怒以及迫切要求政改的自由分子的挑战。9号文件说，西方筹划势力以及国内的意见分子仍然在不时地渗透意识形态领域。报道说，这份文件没有公开发表， 但是有人向《纽约时报》展示了该文件的一个版本，而这个版本得到了接近中共高层官员的4名消息人士，包括某党报的1名编辑的证实。该文件说，反对中共一党统治的人制造事端，要求公开官员财产，利用互联网反腐、反媒体控制和其他敏感话题，煽动对党和政府的不满。《纽约时报》的报道说，这种警告并不是随便发出的。自从发布了9号文件以来，党营出版物和网站强烈谴责了宪政主义和公民社会。官员们还加强措施屏蔽网上的激烈言论。过去数周，2位知名维权人士被拘押。报道引述分析人士说，习近平的这个攻势有冒险成分，因为他承认放缓的经济需要新的市场带动的动力，而这只能来自国家影响力的放松。这份报道说，对宪政统治的谴责引起自由知识分子甚至一些温和的前官员们的不满，而这场运动则让中共守旧派极为兴奋，而他们中许多人坚决反对习近平和李克强所说的中国需要的那种市场改革。好了，以上就是今天热点深度所有内容，更多资讯可以关注6度简报网站，网址是6dobrief.com， 在上面各位可以订阅各类符合您喜好的简报新闻，有免费套餐，也有更加专业的付费套餐供大家选择。今天的视频就到这里，我们下个视频再见。
Where is China heading? This perennial question of executives, investors, and policymakers has taken on new urgency as markets slide, growth slows, international tensions rise, and politics remains in command. That is the context for this year's 2 sessions, one of the most important watch points for analyzing Beijing's policy outlook. The 2 sessions are the concurrent annual meetings of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, which begins on March 4th, and the National People's Congress, NPC, which opens on March 5th. The meetings are likely to conclude around March 11th. The CPPCC is a united front organization that mobilizes social groups to support and advise the party state. The NPC is China's unicameral legislature and notionally the supreme organ of state power. Both bodies are under the control of the Communist Party of China, CPC, but they serve distinct and important political functions. China watchers will be paying special attention to this 2 sessions because General Secretary Xi Jinping has yet to call a 3rd plenum of the party's Central Committee, which traditionally approves economic reforms, and Premier Li Qiang will deliver his first government work report. This article analyzes 4 categories of watch points. Title 1, Policy, what could be in the government work report? Premier Li Qiang will deliver his first government work report, GWR, on behalf of the State Council at the NPC's opening session on March 5th. His reading of this document is the set piece of the 2 sessions and one of its most important watch points. The GWR reviews the past year's work, outlines the overall requirements and policy orientation of development in the coming year, and lists specific tasks the government will pursue. The GWR features several specific policy-related watch points. Part 1, Economic Strategy, doubling down on high-quality development. The economy is the central focus of the GWR, but Li Qiang is unlikely to deliver any big surprises. At a February 19th meeting he said the State Council must follow the instructions given by the party last December at its annual Central Economic Work Conference, CEWC. The CEWC indicated a tactical shift toward growth this year but affirmed Xi Jinping's underlying strategy of high-quality development as the hard truth of the new era. The good news is that Li Qiang is likely to signal at least moderate fiscal stimulus this year. The CEWC readout said party will maintain its active fiscal policy as well as moderately strengthening fiscal policy, making effective use of fiscal policy space, and putting greater emphasis on counter-cyclical adjustments. Despite a recent cut to mortgage rates, the U.S.-China interest rate differential and fears of capital flight mean monetary easing will be less preferred, with the CEWC pledging to maintain its prudent monetary policy. A directive to build the new first and discard the old later also implied Beijing's resolve to favor planned and incremental reforms over the type of negative policy shocks that derailed markets in 2021. The readout of a Politburo meeting on February 29 that was dedicated to discussing the GWR also pledged to create a stable, transparent, and predictable policy environment, while mostly repeating language from the CEWC readout. Li Chang will likely bring sunny messages for private enterprises and the business community to try and drive recovery in consumption, investment, and the stock market. He told a State Council plenary meeting on February 19 that Beijing should use pragmatic and powerful actions to boost the confidence of the whole society, and a State Council executive meeting on February 23 that stabilizing foreign investment is an important momentum point for economic policy. Beijing is also accelerating the passage of a law to promote private sector development. However, the evidence thus far suggests that policy modifications will primarily involve fine-tuning existing economic policy mechanisms, rather than deploying path-breaking new approaches. Xi Jinping himself appears to believe that current issues are the short-term pain required for the long-term gain of a more secure and self-reliant economy. Even though there remain big questions about whether Xi Jinping can maintain China's growth rate without structural reforms that boost consumption, improve local finances, and allow a greater role for market forces. The CEWC readout's emphasis on high-quality development suggests no overhaul of Xi Jinping's state-led approach. This concept is Xi Jinping's existing economic blueprint, introduced at the 19th Party Congress in 2017, embedded in the 14th Five-Year Plan in 2021, and elaborated at the 20th Party Congress in 2022. It entails a new development concept that balances the pursuit of short-term growth with long-term agendas to make growth more innovative, coordinated, green, open, and equitable. This couples with a new development paradigm focused on domestic demand, indigenous technology, and reducing foreign dependencies. Li Chang is unlikely to reveal a definitive refocus on economic growth relative to national security, the confusing dual priorities of Xi Jinping's third term. Recent statements, such as Xi Jinping's comments on the annual reports of party-state institutions, have made positive noises about the importance of economic work. But on February 27 the NPC Standing Committee, NPCSC, revised the law on guarding state secrets to further strengthen the security state by introducing work secrets as a new category of restricted information that could affect firms that deal with China. Only a strong and clear signal would revive confidence in the Chinese business environment. Li Chang may also announce new approaches to Beijing's long-time struggle to boost the share of consumption relative to investment in the economy. A meeting of the influential Central Financial and Economic Affairs Commission on February 23 focused on the potential for the renewal of industrial equipment, replacement of consumer goods, and reduction of logistics costs to stimulate consumption. This idea is likely to manifest in central funding for vouchers that encourage households to upgrade their cars, electronics, and appliances. This approach enables Beijing to boost consumption this year in a way that is state-led and helps create markets for advanced manufacturing and green industries central to Xi Jinping's agenda. But Xi Jinping opposes direct consumer stimulus for ideological reasons, even though it would be more effective at juicing growth. As would be strengthening the social safety net and abolishing restrictions on internal migration and land use, but Xi Jinping still seems unwilling or unconcerned to pursue such deeply redistributive structural reforms. The upshot is that a significant rebalancing toward consumption and a sustained economic revival is not yet in the cards. Fundamentally, Beijing is expected to use the two sessions to announce tactical measures aimed at boosting short-term confidence in China's economy but without changing Xi Jinping's underlying strategy of investment-heavy state-guided development. Major shifts in economic policy are more conceivable at a third plenum chaired by Xi Jinping than in a two-session speech by Li Chang. Still, the degree to which the next plenum, which must be held later this year, will even address economic policy probably depends on how negative China's growth outlook becomes. Part 2, Growth Target, about 5%. Headlines about the GWR will focus on Li Chang's announcement of the GDP growth target for 2024. This figure provides an important signal to officials about how much to prioritize growth relative to other policy goals. Last year outgoing Premier Li Keqiang set a goal of around 5%, which was seen as relatively modest, given that COVID-19 lockdowns cratered growth in 2022. Beijing says that the economy grew 5.2% in 2023, but most external analysts are skeptical of this claim, with estimates of China's true growth going as low as 1.5%. Li Chang will likely reveal a growth target of around 5%. Most provincial-level governments, which convene local two sessions in January and February, have proclaimed similar growth targets, with an average weighted target of 5.4%, down slightly from 5.6% in 2023. The central government usually sets a slightly lower target because it plays more of a role in balancing economic growth with other policy priorities. This year, only Beijing, Liaoning, Tianjin, and Zhejiang increased their targets, better reflecting the central government's focus of pursuing quality over quantity in development. Compared with last year, a growth target of around 5% is still relatively ambitious, especially considering China's tepid post-COVID recovery, property sector challenges, recurrent deflation, and dampened business and consumer confidence. This mark would signal a tactical focus on resuscitating confidence and spending. A lower target of around 4.5% would suggest a greater focus on regulatory agendas and could unsettle businesses and markets, while a higher target of around 5.5% would boost stimulus expectations. Part 3, Deficit Target, Limited Stimulus and Larger Roles for SOEs. The chances of bazooka-style or flood-like stimulus are low. Xi Jinping is set on reorienting the economy away from a growth model driven by risky debt and rooted in the property market, and the country is far from the type of collapse that could overwhelm the party's sophisticated internal security apparatus. In a speech at Davos on January 16, Li Qiang hinted against powerful stimulus like that during the global financial crisis or the 2015 to 2016 financial meltdown. Stimulus is coming, but it will probably be moderate relative to China's economic slowdown. Last year, Li Keqiang announced a mark of 3% of GDP, which has traditionally been considered an upper limit, but the NPCSC revised it to 3.8% in October by issuing 1 trillion renminbi of special treasury bonds to support flagging growth through disaster relief. Li Qiang is expected to announce a deficit-to-GDP ratio for 2024 of 3% or slightly higher. But a 5% GDP growth target this year will require more fiscal or monetary stimulus than the same target last year. Minister of Finance Lan Fowen has already said that fiscal spending will increase this year, and there will also be carryover of last year's bond issuances. Beijing may provide additional fiscal support later this year through around 1 trillion renminbi of special treasury bonds and 4 trillion renminbi of special purpose bonds for local infrastructure investment. The ongoing structural downturn in the property sector, driven by diminishing demand, will continue troubling the real estate market and the financial health of local governments. In response, Beijing is expected to increasingly rely on state-owned enterprises to absorb the debts and finalize the incomplete projects of beleaguered property developers. Moreover, the construction of more affordable housing is anticipated to become an even higher priority. Another watchpoint for greater liquidity in the property sector will be whether Li Qiang omits the phrase "houses are for living in, not for speculation." Xi Jinping's centralization of power means that structural reforms to boost the fiscal capacity of local governments are unlikely, even though this is the most effective way to reduce their reliance on real estate revenues and address their dire financial situations. Instead, Beijing will likely focus on solutions for existing local debt, such as phasing out of COVID-era tax reduction policies, further centralizing pension systems to the provincial level, allowing more bonds to be issued for debt restructuring of local government financing vehicles, and possibly introducing a capital grant system for poorer provinces. However, these positive measures will likely come with increased central scrutiny of local officials in underperforming provinces, leading to anti-corruption purges and uneven policy implementation in the provinces. Part 4, Technology and Industrial Policy, Turbocharging New Productive Forces. The GWR will likely echo Xi Jinping's strategy to favor party-guided tech manufacturing industrial policy over market-oriented reforms in responding to China's economic challenges. On January 31, Xi Jinping chaired a Politburo study session focused on accelerating the development of new productive forces, a concept that he introduced on an inspection tour to Heilongjiang in September. Xi Jinping said that developing new productive forces is an intrinsic requirement and an important focus of promoting high-quality development, his signature economic approach, signaling that they could figure prominently in future policymaking. The experts selected to share their views on the draft GWR with Li Qiang at a meeting on January 23 were predominantly technologists, including Robin Li, CEO of Baidu, Yan Zhangwen, chairman of a smart manufacturing firm, and Wang Chuanfa, an authority on innovation policy. According to Xi Jinping, new productive forces are those in which innovation plays a leading role, and his core measure of success is a significant increase in total factor productivity. China's productivity growth and productivity relative to the United States have declined considerably in recent years, as the state advances and the private sector retreats. If innovation can turn this around, it would help Beijing address economic challenges such as debt, demography, and Western restrictions on trade and investment. Massive investments in developing more advanced technology will help boost total factor productivity by increasing the value added of capital and labor. But they are unlikely to resolve structural challenges, restore confidence, and revive growth close to what would be possible with a more market-oriented approach. Slowing headline growth and Xi Jinping's desire to guide markets, money, and innovation make political signals crucial for businesses and investors. Xi Jinping told the powerful Comprehensively Deepening Reforms Commission on February 19 that the party must focus on what innovation should do, who should organize innovation, and how to support, incentivize, and safeguard innovation. His recent speeches suggest investing in new productive forces means more policy support for upgrading old industries and building new industries including advanced manufacturing, agricultural technology, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, commercial aviation, digital economy, drones, green technology, life sciences, quantum computing, and venture capital. Li Chang flagged the digital economy, green industries, healthcare, and elder care as especially welcome areas for foreign investment in a meeting with Japanese economists on January 25. Part 5, Foreign Policy, Focus on U.S.-China Stability? Li Chang is unlikely to announce any major changes to China's foreign policy, which is decided primarily by Xi Jinping-dominated party institutions. His GWR will likely echo themes of December's Central Foreign Affairs Work Conference. The readout of this highly authoritative meeting provided the strongest articulation yet of China's emerging diplomatic strategy to push back against U.S. leadership by aligning with the Global South on contentious issues such as climate change, free trade, and Palestine. This position reflects Beijing's growing sense that it can benefit from increasing Western divisions over the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Gaza conflict, and from the possibility of another Donald Trump presidency in the United States. On March 7, the foreign minister, whoever it may be at the time, should hold an annual press conference on China's foreign policy priorities for 2024. Last year's conference, coming just weeks after the balloon incident that derailed U.S.-China relations, saw Qin slam U.S. President Joe Biden's call for building guardrails to manage bilateral diplomacy. Now, following the fragile stabilization achieved at the Woodside Summit last November, any comments on guardrails could reflect Xi Jinping's current disposition toward bilateral working groups and crisis control mechanisms, and thus their prospects for success. He will likely prioritize stability this year to improve business sentiment ahead of the U.S. election, with Li Chang meeting the president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on February 28 and Vice President Han Zhang reportedly set to be the guest of honor at an AmCham China dinner. Li Chang is also expected to repeat boilerplate lines about defense policy, such as achieving certain modernization goals by the centenary of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, in 2027, one step in a larger transformation that includes benchmarks in 2035 and 2049. Budget reports will also reveal Beijing's planned spending on national defense, which is likely to keep increasing. Last year, the announced military budget was 1.55 trillion renminbi, up 7.2% from the 1.45 trillion renminbi figure for 2022. However, these growth numbers must be interpreted with some caution, especially when compared with GDP data, as they represent nominal rather than real increases. Part 6, Taiwan and Hong Kong, Incremental Escalation? Beijing's stances on Taiwan and Hong Kong attract significant attention, but meaningful policy changes are unlikely. The GWR always includes a few lines on these topics, but analysts should be cautious about diagnosing major policy shifts, as this are more likely to come from Xi Jinping. In 2020, for example, Li Keqiang omitted the word peaceful when referring to Beijing's desire to reunify with Taiwan, a departure from standard expression, which some media outlets interpreted as a signal of impending aggression. That part of the report, however, had been abbreviated to accommodate discussion of COVID-19, and other officials soon reaffirmed Beijing's preference for peaceful reunification. The most interesting watchpoint this year is whether the GWR and CPPCC will vow to fight rather than just oppose or curb Taiwan independence. Wang Huning used this language for the first time at an annual Taiwan Work Conference on February 23, although lower-level officials have employed the phrase in recent years. Fighting would hint at stronger efforts to deploy military intimidation and economic sanctions to deter Taiwan's incoming president Lai Ching-te pursuing greater autonomy from the mainland. Part 7, Other Policy Watch Points. The GWR features a section on social welfare, which is becoming increasingly important for political legitimacy as growth slows and the potential for social instability rises, as highlighted in Asia Society's report on China 2024, What to Watch. The The GWR, like last year, is likely to target about 12 million new urban jobs and an urban unemployment rate of no more than 5.5%, with added emphasis on youth unemployment and unemployment insurance for migrant workers. The government is also expected to respond to the socio-economic challenges of an aging population by boosting support for both childcare and eldercare services. The GWR also includes a section on environmental and climate policy, but weighty new announcements are unlikely. There may be greater emphasis on green technologies like solar, batteries, and electric vehicles, the new three industries that could become major growth drivers. However, while clean energy capacity is expanding at pace, China is significantly off track in delivering on its 2025 targets for reducing energy intensity and carbon intensity. It will be important to watch whether Li Chang's speech suggests that Beijing is still committed to doing what it takes to achieve these goals given a more challenging economic trajectory. The NPC will also hear annual reports from the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, on economic and social development and the Ministry of Finance, MOF, on central and local budgets, as well as work reports from the NPC Standing Committee, NPCSC, Supreme People's Court, SPC, and Supreme People's Procuratorate, SPP. It will also hold final deliberations on the first-ever revision to the State Council Organic Law adopted in 1980, which will tweak the body's organization in ways that could enhance the NPC's oversight and power. The NPCSC work report will provide clues about which items in its 5-year legislative plan will feature in the annual legislative plan it will publish in April. Pending legislation related to economic policy and business operations that the NPCSC could prioritize this year include a consumption tax law, financial stability law, public interest litigation law, tariff law, and value-added tax law, as well as revisions to the accountancy law, anti-unfair competition law, customs law, enterprise bankruptcy law, foreign trade law, and insurance law. Title 2, Politics, What Will Xi Jinping Do? The two sessions are a rare political event in China where Xi Jinping is not front and center. The limelight belongs nominally to Premier Li Chang, NPC Chairman Zhou Leji, and CPPCC Chairman Wang Huning. These lieutenants will adorn the front page of the party's mouthpiece, People's Daily, but the paper will still track Xi Jinping's every move, offering behind-the-scenes reports that often include more revealing quotes than the main readouts of his activities. Part 1, Xi Jinping's Remarks, Big Picture Political Themes. Xi Jinping's most important contributions at the two sessions are the remarks that he delivers to NPC provincial delegations and CPPCC sectoral groups. In 2023, he spoke to NPC delegates from Jiangsu, a joint meeting of two CPPCC groups, the China National Democratic Construction Association, CNDCA, and the All-China Federation of Industry and Commerce, ACFIC, and NPC delegates from the PLA and the People's Armed Police. Xi Jinping always addresses this military contingent, but he usually visits different provinces and sectors from year to year. Such remarks often reflect or foreshadow key themes of national politics. Last year, for example, Xi Jinping told the Jiangsu delegates that the key to whether we can comprehensively build ourselves into a socialist modern power as scheduled is technological self-reliance and self-improvement. A side story revealed that he said, "At no time should we walk the road of urgency to deliver results, draining the pond to catch the fish, and caring only about GDP." At the CNDCA ACFIC meeting, Xi Jinping claimed that Western countries, led by the United States, have implemented comprehensive containment, encirclement, and suppression against China. These comments presaged domestic policies that prioritized security relative to growth and foreign policies that emphasized ties with Russia and the global South. However, the settings and messages of Xi Jinping's activities are harder to predict than those of the government work report. One watchpoint is whether Xi Jinping visits the NPC delegation from Hunan, where the local party secretary recently launched a great discussion campaign to emancipate the mind, which generated huge but probably unjustified hype about an economic policy overhaul. Part 2, NPC vote tallies, a measure of Xi Jinping's dominance. Xi Jinping's hold on the party will also be closely watched. The NPC has approved everything submitted to it for a vote, but approval margins are not unanimous, as supposedly anonymous voting emboldens some delegates to express dissatisfaction with certain policies or officials by voting no or abstain. In March 2013, for example, after air pollution hit record levels in Beijing, only 67% of delegates approved the name list for the new NPC Environment Committee. The NPC's average annual yes vote on the GWR, the NDRC Development Report, the MOF budget report, and the NPC, SPC, and SPP work reports has increased from a low of 85.3% in 2013, right before Xi Jinping became president, to a two-decade high of 98.6% in 2023. That more delegates either choose or feel compelled to approve Beijing's every move demonstrates Xi Jinping's stronger grip on power compared to his predecessors. Votes will likely be near unanimous again this year, but economic malaise raises the possibility of protest votes that could chip away at Xi Jinping's facade of invincibility, another delicate point to watch. Part 3, Premier's Press Conference, Getting to Know Li Chang? At the end of the two sessions, Li Chang is expected to hold his second annual Premier's Press Conference, continuing a tradition begun by Li Peng in 1991 and formalized by Zhu Rongji in 1998. He will spend about 2 hours reading prepared replies to carefully screened questions from journalists. However, his answers may provide further detail about policies in the government work report, and there is a small chance that his comments shed light on economic debates within the leadership. Last year Li Chang elaborated on Beijing's view that it can manage the social fallout of slowing growth as it pursues other policy priorities, saying that most people do not focus on how much GDP grows every day, they care more about housing, employment, income, education, medical care, the environment, and other concrete things around them. In a more subversive tone, Li Keqiang famously used his press conference in 2020, the final year of Xi Jinping's war on poverty, to say that 600 million Chinese still earned only about 1,000 renminbi per month, $140. When Xiaobao's last press conference in 2012 saw him argue for deeper political structural reform. Part 4, Coverage of Leaders and Delegates, Elite Politics and State-Society Relations. Other political watchpoints center around the profile accorded to top Xi Jinping lieutenants. Will Xi Jinping's Chief of Staff, Kai Chi, be prominent in official coverage, contrary to previous conventions? If so, this would confirm his rising favor as Xi Jinping's informal Deputy General Secretary. Will Li Chang get a more prominent People's Daily spread than Li Keqiang did? If so, this would suggest that he enjoys more political trust and a wider policymaking remit than his predecessor. Will the same happen for Zhao Leji or Wang Huning? Lower down the political hierarchy, following the delegates and proposals spotlighted by the party media is a good indication of which issues the party wants the public to notice, both to build legitimacy and highlight priority areas for future policymaking. Some bills submitted by delegates can even influence the direction and pace of the NPC's legislative agenda. In recent years, popular topics for such proposals include enhancing environmental protections, making it more affordable to raise a family, and creating more jobs for university graduates. These priorities show the continued albeit limited interplay between state and society in China, with the state still monitoring and responding to key sources of societal discontent. Title 3, Personnel, Beijing to restore normalcy to foreign and defense ministries? Last year began with Xi Jinping completing the political triumph he achieved at the 20th Party Congress in October 2022 by securing the selection of a slate of loyalists for top positions in the NPC, CPPCC, and State Council before and during the two sessions in March 2023. But some of those picks soon proved unwise. Qin Gang was removed as foreign minister in July, and resigned from his position as an NPC delegate on February 27, allegedly due to personal indiscretions when he was ambassador to the United States. Li Shangfu was removed as defense minister in October amid reports that he was under investigation for corruption. Both were removed from their concurrent role as state councillor, a higher-ranking post that placed them among China's top few dozen leaders. Beijing is expected to use this two sessions to complete the transition to their successors. Approving personnel decisions at the annual session of the 2,977-person NPC, rather than at a bi-monthly meeting of the 175-member NPC Standing Committee, NPCSC, which holds similar personnel powers, provides an added veneer of legitimacy to these unexpected turnovers. Part 1, New Foreign Minister? Lu Jianchao is the frontrunner to become China's new foreign minister. Lu Jianchao is currently the ministerial-level director of the party's international department, which handles party-to-party rather than state-to-state relations. He is a veteran diplomat who served as assistant foreign minister, head of Xi Jinping's overseas anti-corruption efforts, discipline chief of Xi Jinping's power base in Zhejiang province, and deputy director of the party's Central Foreign Affairs Office, CFAO, under Xi Jinping. Other contenders include Mai Zhaoxiu, the executive deputy foreign minister, who recently acted as China's representative at a G20 foreign ministers meeting, and Liu Haixing, a former diplomat who serves as executive deputy director of the Central National Security Commission. Liu Jianchao is the only active ministerial-level diplomat on the Central Committee, and his busy schedule of high-profile diplomatic trips suggests he is being tested for promotion. In January, he led an unusually diverse delegation of diplomatic, economic, and provincial officials to visit the United States, where he met with Secretary of State Antony Blinken and a host of officials, executives, and scholars. Liu Jianchao is a talented diplomat and a sophisticated English speaker, skilled at defending China's bottom lines without alienating interlocutors. He could help Xi Jinping stabilize relations with the West and repair some of the damage caused by aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy. But it is possible that Liu Jianchao will be passed over. Wang Yi, China's top diplomat, who sits on the party's elite 24-person Politburo as CFAO director, replaced Qin as foreign minister last July, returning to a role he held from March 2013 to December 2022. Wang Yi is widely seen as a caretaker, given that he has another higher-level job, but he now dominates the diplomatic policy space below Xi Jinping, leading some in Beijing to speculate that he could keep the role. If Liu Jianchao becomes foreign minister, the question is whether he will also become a state counselor. If so, he would be Wang Yi's presumptive heir as top diplomat after the 21st Party Congress in 2027 and would have a weightier voice in decision-making. If not, he would remain well below Wang Yi in the pecking order and could turn to more belligerent policies to try and impress Xi Jinping. Part 2. Further promotions for new defense minister? Dong Jun replaced Li Shangfu as defense minister in December. The NPC will likely promote him to state counselor in the State Central Military Commission, CMC, a counterpart of the party's identical but more authoritative body of the same name. Dong Jun is a Central Committee member, but he would have to wait for the third plenum before he could join the party's CMC. Dong Jun had served as commander of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, Navy since August 2021. He is the first naval officer to serve as defense minister, one of several firsts for the Navy under Xi Jinping's tenure and another sign of Beijing's rising focus on sea power. Dong Jun also has command experience in hotspot areas such as the East China Sea and South China Sea, reflecting the importance to Xi Jinping of advancing Beijing's maritime claims in these areas. Part 3. New state counselors? Dong Jun is China's top military diplomat, and Liu Jianchao would be China's main interlocutor with foreign governments. Vesting them with the same roles and powers as their predecessors would help Beijing improve its international outreach at a time of significant economic uncertainty and geopolitical conflict. If neither Dong Jun nor Liu Jianchao becomes a state counselor, this could suggest a higher degree of mistrust and paralysis at the center of Xi Jinping's leadership and a poorer outlook for China's attempts to both manage tensions with the West and lead the global South. Part 4. Other personnel changes? There is a rumor circulating that Wang Qingxian, governor of Anhui, will replace Sun Yeli as director of the State Council Information Office, the party's top external propaganda agency. Wang Qingxian is a veteran journalist who worked with several Xi Jinping associates in Shaanxi and Shandong. His rise, following Xi Jinping's calls to improve economic propaganda, would add weight to the view that Xi Jinping sees China's market woes as primarily a narrative problem. Meng Fanli, party secretary of Shenzhen City, might succeed Wang Qingxian in Anhui. Another rumor holds that the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, MIE, leadership could be refreshed for the first time since April 2020. This idea is more speculative, as both Party Secretary Sun Jinlong and Minister Huang Ruanxiu are well below the ministerial retirement age of 65. However, Sun was linked to the now decimated Communist Youth League faction and Huang is not a Communist Party member, so Xi Jinping may want to replace them with closer political allies. Another possibility is the replacement of Minister of Transport Li Xiaopeng, the son of former Premier Li Peng, who will turn 65 in June and has held the role since 2016. Title 4, Timeline, Key Events. The CPPCC and NPC will not publish full agendas until the day before their opening sessions, but a review of past schedules sheds light on the likely order of business. Their sessions have begun on March 4th and March 5th, respectively, for many years, and an annual notice published by the Beijing Municipal Public Security Bureau on managing low-altitude aircraft during the two sessions hints that this year's proceedings will conclude on March 11th. Much of the time is taken up by CPPCC members and NPC delegates deliberating the drafts of various reports, although meaningful revisions are seldom made before they are adopted. This is the likely schedule. March 4th, CPPCC opening session, Wang Huning delivers the CPPCC Standing Committee Work Report, a CPPCC Vice Chairman delivers a report on work related to CPPCC proposals, NPC publishes full agenda for its 2024 meeting. March 5th, NPC opening session, Li Chang delivers the government work report to the NPC, NPC delegates review the NDRC development report and MOF budget report. March 6th, Xi Jinping begins speaking to various NPC delegations and CPPCC groups. March 7th, the foreign minister holds an annual press conference on China's foreign policy and foreign relations. March 7th or March 8th, Zhao Leji delivers the NPCSC work report to the NPC, Zhang Jun delivers the SPC work report to the NPC, Ing Yong delivers the SPP work report to the NPC, MOF and NDRC leaders may hold press conferences. March 8th to 10th, approximate NPC delegates vote to appoint new ministers and state councillors. Possible CPPCC closing session, CPPCC delegates vote on resolutions to adopt the Standing Committee report and reports on work proposals. March 11th, NPC closing session, NPC delegates vote on resolutions to adopt the GWR and reports of the NDRC, MOF, NPCSC, SPC, and SPP. Li Chang conducts the Premier's press conference, after all meetings conclude.
万事不求人，私人助理、私人顾问时代来临了。六度万事，万事相助，超强博士群不断奉献专项服务，信息、财经、健康、文娱、教育、旅游、消费、科技、美食，让您的生活品质全线升级。六度世界现在体验，请去3w.6度.world。
限时免费期间，全体注册网友免费使用付费版的高级功能如下：支持论坛搜索，免费画图。第一步，点击右上角最左边的机器人符号开始对话，像图片中红框中的那样。第二步，如图选择六度万事，我们未来将推出更多的 AI 供大家选择。然后就可以与六博士悄悄畅谈了。还支持论坛内部信息搜索哦。您还可以让六博士做你的助手，帮你绘制漂亮图片。最后可以点击添加好友进来，一起与六博士工作。一起来3w.6度.world 尝试吧。
大家好，我是六度世界的六博士，我与小六子为大家主持华尔街故事节目，主要内容包括：一、价值投资回归，市场重拾信心；二、企业治理改善，股东权益增强；三、长期投资策略盛行，耐心成就财富。那么，小六子可以先跟我们说说价值投资回归，市场重拾信心。
各位亲爱的市场观察者、投资者以及那些偶然迷路闯进股市的朋友们，今天我们要来聊一聊一个让人既觉得古老又时髦的话题——价值投资的回归。首先，让我们来回顾一下价值投资的祖师爷本杰明·格雷厄姆。他在上个世纪提出了价值投资的概念，简单来说，就是买入那些市场价格低于其内在价值的股票。这种策略就像是在超市里寻找打折的罐头，你知道罐头里的食物是好的，但由于某些原因，它们被标上了低价。然而，随着时间的推移，市场上出现了各种各样的投资策略，比如追逐增长的成长型投资、短线交易，甚至是那些让人眼花缭乱的量化交易策略。价值投资就像是那位在派对上坚持穿着老派西装的绅士，虽然不那么吸引眼球，但却有着不可动摇的内在品质。但是，就在大家都忙着追逐新潮流的时候，市场环境开始发生了变化。经过一段时间的高波动和不确定性，投资者开始意识到那些闪闪发光的新玩意儿并不总是那么靠谱。于是，就像是时尚界的复古风潮，价值投资这位老派绅士突然间又回到了人们的视线中。市场重拾信心的原因很简单，在经历了一段时间的过山车行情之后，投资者开始寻找那些稳定可靠的投资对象。他们开始重新评估公司的基本面，寻找那些被低估的资产，就像是在海滩上寻找那些被浪花遗落的宝贝。这种回归也许并不是那么轰轰烈烈，但它却是实实在在的。价值投资的回归提醒我们，无论市场如何变化，那些基本的投资原则，比如耐心、纪律和对价值的坚持，永远不会过时。当然， 这并不意味着价值投资就是万能的。毕竟市场上没有什么是一成不变的，就像是那些经典的西装，偶尔也需要根据时尚潮流来做些小小的调整。但是当市场重新发现了价值投资的魅力，那些坚持这一策略的投资者，就像是在漫长的冬夜中等待黎明的人，终于看到了曙光的到来。所以各位朋友，当你们在股市的海洋中航行时，不妨偶尔放慢脚步，回头看看那些被遗忘的价值投资理念，他们或许正是你在波动市场中寻找稳定之锚的关键。记住，有时候最好的新事物其实是那些经过时间考验的老东西。
谢谢小六子的介绍，那再跟我们介绍一下企业治理改善，股东权益增强。
好的，让我们以一种轻松的方式来探讨这个看似枯燥却又极其重要的话题：企业治理改善与股东权益增强。想象一下，企业就像一个大家庭，而股东就是那些爱管闲事的远房亲戚。在过去，这些亲戚可能只能在家族聚会上发表一两句牢骚，然后就被安排坐在角落里，手里拿着一杯饮料，眼睁睁看着家族中的大佬们做出所有重要决策。但是随着企业治理的改善，这些远房亲戚们的话语权越来越大，他们开始能够对家族的重要事务发表意见，甚至影响决策。这种改变就像是在家族聚会上给了每位亲戚一个麦克风，让他们的声音能够被所有人听见。企业治理的改善意味着建立了更加透明和负责的决策机制，让股东能够更好的监督管理层，确保他们不会做出损害股东利益的决策。举个例子，假如企业是一艘大船，股东就是船上的乘客。在治理不善的情况下，船长、CEO 和他的船员、管理层可能会偷偷改变航向，驶向一个充满冰山的危险海域，只为了能够捕捉到传说中的金色鱼群，短期利益。而乘客、股东只能在船舱里瑟瑟发抖，希望自己不会成为下一个泰坦尼克号的悲剧。但是当企业治理改善后，乘客们不仅有了船上的广播系统、透明的沟通机制，还能透过投票决定航线、股东大会决议，甚至在必要时可以把不称职的船长换掉，管理层的问责制。这样一来，船的航行就更加安全，乘客的生命和财产也得到了更好的保障。总之，企业治理的改善就像是给股东发了一张超级英雄变身卡，让他们从一群默默无闻的小角色变成了能够左右企业命运的超级英雄。而当股东的权益得到增强时，企业就更有可能朝着长期和可持续的方向发展，最终实现所有人的共赢。这不仅是一场企业治理的革命，也是股东权益的狂欢。
谢谢小六子的介绍，那再跟我们介绍一下长期投资策略盛行，耐心成就财富。
各位听众，今天我们来聊一个古老而又时髦的话题：长期投资策略。这个策略就像是一瓶陈年老酒，越陈越香，但前提是你得有足够的耐心，等它慢慢酿造。首先，让我们来回顾一下历史。在古埃及时期，法老王就是长期投资的高手。他们不仅投资于金字塔的建设，还投资于农业，通过尼罗河的泛滥来灌溉农田。这些投资策略不仅保证了国家的稳定，还为后世留下了无价的文化遗产。当然，如果你的投资期限是几千年，那么这种策略可能有点不切实际。再来看看中世纪的欧洲，当时的商人和银行家开始了长途贸易和信贷业务。他们的投资期限可能不像法老王那么长，但也需要相当的耐心和远见。当然，他们也面临着海盗的威胁和战争的风险，这让长期投资变得更加刺激。现在，让我们跳到现代，长期投资策略在今天的金融市场中依然盛行。为什么呢？因为历史告诉我们，市场虽然会经历起伏，但长期来看，它们往往会向上发展。这就像是种植一棵树，你不能每天去检查它长高了没有，而是要给它时间，让它深耕故土，最终长成参天大树。当然，长期投资也需要智慧，就像是选择合适的土壤和种子，你需要选择合适的投资标的和时机。这就需要对市场有深入的了解，并且有能力忽略短期的波动和噪音。那么，耐心如何成就财富呢？让我们来看一个有趣的故事。有一位名叫罗斯的投资者，他在20岁时开始每年投资2000美元，直到他30岁，然后他就再也没有投资过。另一位投资者名叫彼得，他从30岁开始投资，每年也是2000美元，一直投到了60岁。假设他们的投资年回报率都是8%， 到了60岁时，罗斯的投资总值将远远超过彼得的，尽管罗斯只投资了10年，而彼得投资了30年。这就是复利的魔力，加上耐心，它可以创造奇迹。所以，亲爱的朋友们，如果你想在投资的世界中获得成功，记住这3个字：耐心，耐心，还是耐心。就像是酿造一瓶好酒，给它时间，让它慢慢成熟，最终你将能享受到那令人陶醉的滋味。当然，别忘了在等待的过程中，偶尔品尝一下，确保你的投资之路依然在正确的轨道上。
总结来说，今天我们探讨了3个重要的话题：价值投资的回归、企业治理改善与股东权益增强，以及长期投资策略的盛行。这些话题都指向同一个方向，那就是市场重拾信心，回归基本原则。价值投资的回归提醒我们，无论市场如何变化，那些基本的投资原则，比如耐心、纪律和对价值的坚持，永远不会过时。企业治理的改善使股东的话语权增加，从而保护了股东的利益，推动了企业的长期稳定发展。长期投资策略的盛行则告诉我们，耐心和智慧是创造财富的关键。在这个飞速变化的世界中，我们常常被各种新潮流所吸引，很容易迷失方向。但是，回归基本原则，保持耐心和纪律，才是真正的成功之道。现在，我想听听你们的想法。你有什么样的想法？对于这些话题，你有什么疑问或者意见？请在下方留言，与我们一起讨论吧。谢谢大家收看6度穿越系列节目。这个节目由媒体专业人士、科学家、工程技术人员编纂、设计、制作。但是，这些内容并非用于做出决策或法律裁定的基础。欢迎在节目留言区发表您的见解，纠正节目可能存在的错误。谢谢大家收看。欢迎订阅我们的频道，给我们节目点赞。
观众朋友，大家好，欢迎收看今天的辛枫视线。南华早报报道，中国今年的两会很可能会缩短，预计今年的两会将在短短8天内就结束，要远远短于疫情之前的平均会议时间。到目前为止，官方只宣布两会将于3月5日开幕，至于两会将于何时闭幕，北京只字未提。不过，北京警方发布的从3月1日至3月12日禁止低空飞行的通知表明，此次两会活动最早可能在3月11日就结束。邻近的天津市也发布了类似的通知。中国地方政府经常在重要会议、世博会和奥运会等重要活动期间禁止无人机和其他低空物体飞行。去年，北京和天津的禁令于3月14号解除，也就是两会于3月13号闭幕后的第2天。虽然没有固定的持续时间，但是多年来两会一直都是持续2周左右，而疫情前一年2018年的两会是多年来最长的两会之一，2次活动总共持续了18天。那一年，政协开幕式于3月3号开始，全国人大会议于3月5号开始，一直持续到3月20号。那一年的两会时间之所以特别长，是为了让代表们讨论更多的议程，包括将习近平思想写入党章。在疫情之前，两会通常在3月举行，一般持续2周左右。但是在新冠疫情爆发期间，两会时间大大缩短。2020年，由于封锁，两会推迟举行，最终在5月份举行时，会议只持续了8天。随着疫情蔓延到2021年和2022年，两会的会期仍然较短，每次都是8天左右。而2023年，随着中国解除疫情限制，两会延长了2天，以便讨论20大之后的新政治局委员的阵容。今年的安排表明，会议时长又回到了疫情期间的8天左右。虽然今年中国不再要求进行新冠测试，但是两会的媒体中心已经表示，将要求香港和澳门的记者在领取记者证时进行咽拭子的测试。目前尚不清楚这一要求是否适用于内地记者以及数千名全国人大和政协委员。对于周一召开的两会，全球都在关注北京将采取什么样的措施来重启中国经济。持续疲软的数据令人怀疑，目前的刺激措施仍然不够强大。周五，国家统计局公布了最新数据。好消息是，服务业 PMI 创下了7月以来的最高水平，这与新年假期期间不错的旅游支出相符合。但是坏消息是，制造业 PMI 下跌至 49.1， 仍然处于荣枯线以下，工厂活动连续第5个月放缓。该数据进一步显示了中国经济复苏不平衡的迹象。彭博社的亚洲经济学家表示，中国2月份的一些亮点都集中在服务业，但是问题是这种改善是否可持续？2月份的数据受到过年的影响，而且经过仔细研究，农历新年的旅游支出也并不像看上去的那么令人放心。官方数据显示，人均支出终于超过2019年的峰值，但是今年的假期实际上比往年更长。汇丰银行分析师估计，这样计算的话，人均实际支出仍然仅为2019年水平的91%。不平衡的数据强化了进一步政策支持的必要性。房地产行业显然是面临再次疲软的风险，建筑业 PMI 指数再次大幅下降。最新数据显示，12月份房地产投资同比下降24%，创下2008年以来的新低，而且1月份房价下跌速度更快。刚刚公布的最新数据表明，中国经济仍是在努力站稳，距离再次开始奔跑还有很大差距。专家表示，下周中国举行的两会，除非政府发出一些强烈信号，特别是在住房方面，否则2024年的情况可能还是会像去年一样。投资者目前最关注的公告包括2024年中国国内生产总值的增长以及通胀和就业目标。预计李强将在周2的年度政府工作报告中宣布经济增长目标。分析师预计北京的目标是5%左右，与2023年相同，但是基于当前的政策力度，市场共识是今年将增长4.6%。经济学家表示，官方公布对 GDP 目标的叙述将会显示中国宏观经济政策的范围，以及政府为了维持增长而必须做出的努力。如果官方宣布5%或者更高的目标，可以表明北京重振经济的坚定决心，预示着未来将会采取更加激进的刺激措施。如果官方低于5%的目标，则可能会被视为更加的悲观，表明政策将会有所限制。解读这一目标的关键是配套措施，这将揭示北京计划如何实现目标。另外一个值得关注的重要问题是，北京方面是否愿意推出更加积极的刺激措施来提振消费者支出。经济学家表示，这将比额外的基础设施支出带来更大的效益。预计北京今年的消费者通胀目标仍然将维持在3%左右，2015年以来一直是这个数字。投资者越来越关注中国消费需求的强劲程度，因为这是经济增长的关键引擎。1月份中国通胀下降速度为14年来最快，凸显出需求持续疲软。而在房地产方面，北京肯定要解决房地产行业的问题，而政策的措辞方式将会受到关注。投资者将会关注李强在报告中是否还会再次提到房子是用来住的，不是用来炒的这句话，这是今年房地产政策的线索。去年7月份，这句话被首次从政治局声明中删除，当时被视为是北京倾向于宽松的迹象。如果李强在今年两会上还是没有提这句话，则可能表明中国将会进一步放松房地产政策。多家外媒此前还报道，中国可能会依靠国有企业来帮助负债累累的开发商完成住房项目，并且加强对房地产市场的控制。穆迪分析认为，北京可以提供更多房地产行业的资金，以加快未完工项目的建设，因为项目交付的延误会削弱信心，并且削弱消费的需求。而具体的政策方面，可能会再次放宽对首次购房者的限制，并且降低首付比例。而在财政预算方面，市场观察人士在关注是否有更多的财政政策来支持经济，同时密切关注地方政府债务水平的不断上升。高盛的策略师认为，政府将把2024年的赤字目标定为 GDP 的3%。中国去年3月设定了同样的目标，但是在发行了1万亿元的特别债券之后，将其调整为 3.8%。高盛表示，赤字目标如果超过 GDP 的 3% 到 3.5%， 或者中央政府特别债券发行额度超过1万亿元人民币，都可能有助于增强对今年经济前景的信心。瑞银的报告则表示，人们是否会继续投资中国，这在很大程度上取决于政府是否能够让投资者相信他们是真心实意的要重启两大经济增长引擎，也就是消费和投资。在政策适度支持的情况下，瑞银建议投资者同样程度的投资于高风险和低风险证券， 并且向防御性的高收益股息股倾斜。这部分的投资很多就是指国有企业，因为瑞银认为国有企业可能会从宽松政策和国家队救市中获益最多。但是分析师表示，这一切的前提是北京还是要加大支持力度，不然2024年将会仍然停滞不前。以上就是今天新风视线的全部内容，感谢您的收看。这里是华尔街电视，如果喜欢记得点赞并且订阅我们的频道，我们下期节目再见。
6度旅行管家，你的旅行全策划。注册或登录6度世界，点击右上角机器人按钮，然后选择6度旅行管家，就可以开始与 AI 对话了。
你好，很高兴能为你服务。你打算去哪里旅行呢？
我想去希腊。
太棒了，希腊是一个美丽的国家。你对希腊的哪些方面感兴趣呢？比如历史遗迹、美食、海滩或者其他的？
海滩和美食。
好的，了解了。你有没有任何饮食禁忌或者特殊的饮食要求，比如素食、无麸质食品等？
不吃牛肉。
好的，我会注意在推荐餐厅时避免牛肉。你计划的旅行时间是多久呢
？4天。
了解了。你是打算独自旅行，还是和他人一起？这会影响到旅行的安排。
与父母一起。
好的，我会考虑到这一点。你的预算大概是多少呢？这会影响到住宿和餐饮的选择。
1000欧一天。
好的，这是一个相当宽裕的预算。你对住宿有什么特别的要求吗？比如希望住在市中心，或者希望有海景，或者需要特别的设施？
希望有海景。
根据你的需求，我为你找到了一些在希腊的海景酒店。这些酒店都有很好的海景，你可以根据你的喜好和预算来选择。接下来，我将为你规划一个4天的旅行行程。你希望在这4天里每天都去海滩吗？还是希望有1天或2天去参观一些历史遗迹或者市区
？1天海滩，2天历史遗迹，1天市区。
根据你的要求和我从网络上找到的信息，我为你制定了以下的旅行计划。第1天，海滩。你可以选择去希腊最美的海滩之一，比如 Eleftheris 海滩或 Navigo 海滩。这些海滩都有清澈的海水和美丽的景色，在那里你可以尽情享受阳光和海滩，或者参加一些水上活动。第2天和第3天，历史遗迹。第2天，你可以参观希腊最著名的历史遗迹之一雅典卫城，在那里你可以看到帕台农神庙和其他古代建筑。第3天，你可以选择去德尔菲，这是一个古代的宗教中心，也是世界遗产之一。或者你也可以去克诺索斯宫，这是欧洲最古老的城市之一。第4天，市区。在雅典市区，你可以参观一些有趣的地方，比如古老的波卡区、现代的购物中心，或者一些美术馆和博物馆。你也可以在当地的餐厅品尝希腊美食，比如希腊沙拉、烤羊肉和橄榄油面包。住宿推荐。根据你的预算和要求，我为你找到了一些海景酒店的推荐，这些酒店都有优美的海景，同时也提供高质量的服务。餐饮推荐。在希腊，你可以尝试一些当地的美食，比如希腊沙拉、烤羊肉和橄榄油面包。但是请注意，由于你不吃牛肉，所以在点餐时需要提醒服务员。希望这个旅行计划能满足你的需求。如果你有任何问题或需要更多的信息，欢迎随时向我提问。